welcome, dear guests. Dear outstanding guests, let's welcome you all to our first conference of the annual conference of UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, Faculty of Medicine, Ain Shams University, Cairo, Egypt, under the name Biotechnology, Ethical Challenges and Opportunities. The goal of the chair is to create a community of bioethicists in Egypt to facilitate the exchange of knowledge, experiences, and good practices. This conference will be a venue for collaboration and discussion of the current and future ethical challenges and issues in our society. We hope to enjoy your time, find interesting topics and talks, and share your expertise. General instructions: all attendees are muted. Please write your questions in the chat box and we will read them during the discussion session. The certificate of attendance will be sent to all the attendees via the email. You don't need to send an inquiry for it. Okay, let's welcome our first guest, Dr. Bishr Imam, Senior Program Specialist, Regional Bureau for Science for the Arab States.
شكرا جزيلا. السيدات صباح الخير. سأقوم بإلقاء الكلمة نيابة عن الدكتور عبد العزيز المزيني باللغة العربية إن سمحتم. يسعدني ويشرفني سيداتي وسادتي الحضور الكريم، يسعدني ويشرفني أن أكون معكم اليوم في المؤتمر السنوي الأول لكراسي اليونسكو لأخلاقيات العلوم الحيوية البيولوجيا في كلية الطب بجامعة عين شمس. ويسعدني أن أنقل تحيات الدكتور عبد العزيز المزيني مدير مكتب اليونسكو الإقليمي للعلوم في الدول العربية أي مكتب القاهرة على دعوتكم الكريمة، وقد كلفني أن أكون هنا اليوم نيابة عنه وممثلا لمكتب اليونسكو الإقليمي للعلوم في الدول العربية للمشاركة في افتتاح هذا المؤتمر، متمنيا لكم التوفيق والنجاح. أود أن أخص بالشكر الدكتور محمود المتين رئيس جامعة عين شمس، وإضافة إلى اللجنة المنظمة وعلى رأسهم الدكتور ياسوني عزب مدير كرسي اليونسكو وجميع أعضاء اللجنة المنظمة على مجهودهم ومجهودهم الوافر في تنظيم هذا المؤتمر الهام والذي يهدف إلى استقراء كيفية تواصل الأخلاقيات مع التكنولوجيا الحيوية لضمان استخدام آمن وعادل لتلك التقنيات ومناقشة التحديات والفرص المتوفرة أمامنا في هذا المجال. تكمن أهمية هذا المؤتمر بتركيزه على التعاون العلمي في أخلاقيات البيولوجيا، والتي توفر إرشادات للمهنيين والمهنيات في المجالات الطبية بشأن اتخاذ القرارات السريرية واستخدام التقدم في التقنيات الطبية. وقد لعبت تلك الأخلاقيات دورا حيويا في صياغة وتعديل السياسات والتشريعات في الفترة الأخيرة، وتعتبر أخلاقيات العلوم الحيوية أي البيولوجيا مزيجا من المكونات العلمية التقنية والإنسانية أيضا، ولا تحتاج إلى الاعتراف ببعض المعايير الراسخة منذ فترة طويلة والتي تعتبر أساسية لأخلاقيات الطب. ولذلك تعمل اليونسكو بنشاط على وضع المعايير على المستوى العالمي فيما يخص أخلاقيات البيولوجيا، وقد أدت تلك الجهود إلى اعتماد 3 صكوك دولية رئيسية في هذا المجال، وهي الإعلان العالمي بشأن الجينوم البشري وحقوق الإنسان في عام 1997، الإعلان الدولي بشأن بيانات الجينية المورثات البشرية عام 2003، الإعلان العالمي لأخلاقيات علوم الأحياء وحقوق الإنسان وذلك في عام 2005. وخلال جائحة كوفيد-19 ومن منظور أخلاقيات العلوم الحيوية ناشدت اليونسكو بالضرورة الملحة لتجاوز الانقسامات السياسية والحدود الجغرافية والاختلافات الثقافية من أجل التركيز على حاجتنا ومسؤوليتنا المشتركة الأساس، والتي تقتضي خوض الحوار من أجل والتعاون من أجل اتخاذ التدابير المناسبة للتغلب على هذا الوضع الكارثي. ويتمثل دور لجان أخلاقيات البيولوجيا ولجان الأخلاقيات في هذا النوع من الأزمات، سواء كان ذلك على المستوى الوطني أو الإقليمي أو الدولي، في دعم الحوار البناء القائم على القناعة الراسخة بوجوب استناد القرارات السياسية على الأسس العلمية واسترشادها بالاعتبارات والتوجهات الأخلاقية، حيث أنه لا يجوز للحاجة الملحة لإيجاد علاج لداء كوفيد-19 أن تحول دون تطبيق الممارسات البحثية المسؤولة، ويجب على الباحثين والباحثات أن يلتزموا ويلتزمن بالمبادئ الأخلاقية للبحث العلمي، وعليهم وعليهن نظرا لطبيعة هذا الوباء الحذر من الاستخدام المزدوج للبعوث. وتخضع جميع الأنشطة البحثية عادة خاصة في مجال البيولوجيا لفحص دقيق تطلع به لجان مختصة معنية بالأخلاقيات. يجب أن تستمر هذه اللجان المستقلة في أداء مهامها بلا انقطاع ودون ضغوط تفرضها الجائحة سوى ضغوط دعم العمل البحثي الأخلاقي. أما عن استخدام التكنولوجيا في المجالات الطبية، فإنه يمكن للتكنولوجيا أو التقنيات الرقمية سواء عبر الهواتف النقالة أو وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي والذكاء الاصطناعي أن تؤدي دورا محوريا في التعامل مع الجوائح، إذ يمكن الاستعانة بها كما حصل لرصد انتشار المرض وسلوك الأفراد المعنية بهذا المرض والتنبؤ بهذا والتأثير فيهما. ولذلك من المهم جدا الحرص على معالجة المسائل الأخلاقية والاجتماعية والسياسية المرتبطة باستخدام هذه التقنيات بصورة مناسبة، وينبغي احترام حقوق الإنسان دائما وتحقيق التوازن الدقيق بين قيم الخصوصية والاستقلال من جهة وقيم السلامة والأمن الاجتماعي من جهة الثانية. وكما ذكرت لجنة اليونسكو الدولية لأخلاق البيولوجيا IDC ولجنة اليونسكو العالمية لأخلاقيات المعارف العلمية والتكنولوجية كوميرس، فإنه ينبغي وضع اعتبارات أخلاقيات البيولوجيا وأخلاقيات العلوم والتكنولوجيا المستندة إلى حقوق الإنسان في صميم الإجراءات الرامية لمكافحة هذه الجائحة المستعصية. وفي هذا السياق ترى اليونسكو أنه من الحيوي جدا توفير أسس متينة للتفكير الجماعي فيما يتعلق بالأبعاد الأخلاقية والاجتماعية الخاصة بكل من العلاج الطبي وبسياسات الوقاية والاحتواء التي تضعها الدول المختلفة. وقد نسق مكتب اليونسكو في القاهرة منذ فترة صياغة شرعة أخلاقيات العلوم والتكنولوجيا في المنطقة العربية، والتي اعتمدها القادة العرب على مستوى القمة، وذلك من أجل حماية الأفراد والجماعات المشاركين في البحث العلمي، وكذلك أيضا الكائنات الحية والعناصر البيئية الأخرى التي قد تكون معنية بالبحث العلمي من حيث استخدامها كعناصر في هذه البحوث، ومنع الانحرافات والاستخدام الخبيث لتطبيقات العلم والتكنولوجيا، ووضع ضوابط لتنظيم سلوك العلماء والمهنيين والمهنيات العاملين والعاملات في مجال العلوم من أجل تعزيز المسؤولية والحفاظ على المصداقية. وتم أيضا الاسترشاد بالشرح لعمل عدة دورات تدريبية افتراضية أو إلكترونية للباحثين والباحثات والناشئين والناشئات للتدريب على الأخلاقيات التي تنص عليها هذه الشرعة. السيدات والسادة الحضور الكريم، أحب أن أعبر عن سعادتي بإنشاء كرسي اليونسكو لأخلاقيات البيولوجيا في جامعة مصرية عريقة كجامعة عين شمس، ونحن نثمن عاليا الدور النشيط الذي يقوم به هذا الكرسي على المستويين الوطني والإقليمي. ويهدف هذا الكرسي إلى تعزيز التعاون بين الجامعات والمنظمات واللجان المعنية بأخلاقيات العلوم الحيوية والقوانين المنظمة لممارسة المهن الطبية في مصر وخارجها. نحن في مكتب اليونسكو الإقليمي للعلوم في الدول العربية نفتخر بانضمام هذا الكرسي إلى شبكة كراسي اليونسكو في العالم، وأحب أن أوضح أنه قد تم إطلاق برنامج الكراسي اليونسكو أو يونيتوين التوأمة يونسكو تشيرز في عام 1992، وهو اليوم يضم أكثر من 850 مؤسسة في 117 دولة. ويعزز هذا البرنامج التعاون الدولي بين الجامعات والشبكات لتعزيز القدرات المؤسسية والفردية من خلال تبادل المعرفة والعمل التعاوني. ويدعم البرنامج إنشاء كراسي اليونسكو وشبكات التوأمة في مجالات اختصاص اليونسكو، أي التعليم والتربية، العلوم الطبيعية والعلوم الاجتماعية والثقافة والاتصال. ومن خلال هذه الشبكة تجمع مؤسسات التعليم العالي والبحث العلمي في جميع أنحاء العالم مواردها البشرية والمادية لمواجهة التحديات الملحة وللمساهمة في تنمية المجتمع. تعمل هذه الشبكات والكراسي كبنك فكري think وبناة جسور بين الأوساط الأكاديمية من جهة والمجتمع المدني والمجتمعات المحلية والبحوث وصناع السياسات. وقد أثبتت هذه الكراسي والشبكات فائدتها في إبلاغ قرارات، في إعلان القرارات السياسية، وفي إنشاء مبادرات تعليمية جديدة، وفي توليد الابتكار من خلال البحث المشترك والمساهمة في إثراء البرامج الجامعية الحالية مع تعزيز التنوع الثقافي. في المناطق التي تفتقر إلى الخبرة تطورت الكراسي والشبكات إلى أقطاب للتميز والابتكار على المستويات الإقليمية ودون الإقليمية، وتسهم اليوم في تعزيز التعاون بين الشمال والجنوب والجنوب أيضا. وهذا الكرسي هو جزء لا يتجزأ من تلك الشبكات وتلك المنظومة. أتمنى لكم مؤتمرا حافلا بالنقاشات المثمرة، وأشكركم على اهتمامكم وإلى اللقاء. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا يا فندم. And now, with the Director of UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, Ain Shams University, Cairo, Dr. Sonia Mohammed Azab, Professor of Forensic Medicine and Toxicology, Faculty of Medicine, Ain Shams University.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام يا فندم.
بس كده الشير سكرين شغال؟
لا
لسه يا فندم. We are waiting.
So please open the presentation first.
Okay, it is open.
Okay, go to the Zoom again.
Share.
And choose share screen and choose the presentation.
Yes, that's perfect. Working.
Open the presentation.
Okay.
اه تمام يا فندم.
تمام. Yes, you can start.
السلام عليكم، اهلا بحضراتكم كل الموجودين وكل الاساتذه اللي شرفونا بالاشتراك في المؤتمر وكل الساده الحضور، اهلا بحضراتكم. يسعدني ارحب بيكم في اول مؤتمر سنوي لينا، ان شاء الله يا رب يكون وقت مثمر ومفيد لكل الموجودين. انا مش هاخد من وقتكم كتير، جاست بس ان انا هدي فكره سريعه عن الكرسي اليونسكو لاخلاقيات علوم الاحياء اللي تم انشاؤه في جامعه عين شمس. حابه بس اول حاجه زي ما دكتور بشر انا بوضح ان كرسي اليونسكو ده ضمن مشروع كبير تبع اليونسكو اسمه يونت وين. الهدف منه هو بالعربي التوأمه بين الجامعات. الهدف منه انشاء شراكه بين الجامعات وبعضها تحت مظله اليونسكو، بحيث ان هي يشجع ان يكون في كوبريشن او نتوركينج بين الجامعات وبعضها بهدف تبادل المعلومات والخبرات ويعني تشجيع الانشطه اللي تخدم الهدف اللي عشانه انشئت الكراسي في المجال اللي زي ما دكتور بشر قال المجالات اللي بتشرف عليه هيئه اليونسكو. كرسي اليونسكو في جامعه عين شمس لاخلاقيات علوم الاحياء تم توقيع الاتفاقيه بين الامين العام وبين رئيس جامعه عين شمس في شهر ابريل 2020. الهدف الاساسي من انشاء كرسي اليونسكو تعزيز او تشجيع المجالات العمل تحت في مجالات البايو ايثكس وات ايفر كانت تيتشنج تريننج ريسيرش اكتيفيتيز، وبرضه تو ستيموليت ناشونال اند انترناشونال نتورك فور كولابوريشن. زي ما قلنا الهدف الاساسي لكل ده اكستشينج اوف نوليدج اكسبيرينس مع بين الجامعات وبين المؤسسات وبعضها، سواء كانت جوه مصر او في المنطقه العربيه او انترناشونال. Objectives of the chair to promote teaching of bioethics to medical students, increase awareness of the principles of bioethics and the necessary codes of practice among healthcare providers and researchers, to booster establishment of national network of bioethics to facilitate exchange of knowledge, experience and good practice. برضو من ضمن الأهداف to increase public awareness of patient and human rights. الحمد لله بدأنا الاكتيفيتي، يعني احنا بدأنا في ابريل 2020 في عز أزمة الكورونا والحظر اللي كان موجود وقتها، بس الحمد لله مجرد ما بدات الدنيا تشتغل بدانا باول ويبينار. كان برضو ده عشان نخدم الاوبجيكتيف الاول اوبجيكتيف لينا اللي هو تو بروموت تيتشنج اوف بايو ايثكس. كان ان كولابوريشن مع ستاف مميزين من جامعات مصر، كان جامعه القاهره واسيوط واسكندريه وزقازيق. كان الويبينار Teaching Ethics to Medical Students The Current and the Future. تم عرض الاكتيفيتي يعني خبره كل الجامعه في Teaching of Bioethics لطلبه الطب، والحمد لله خرجنا بريكومنديشن مهم، وكان من اهمها ان احنا نحاول نعمل ستاندرد او برود لاينز كده لتدريس البايو ايثكس لطلبه الطب، وان شاء الله دي من ضمن الحاجات اللي هي بلاند ان احنا نكمل فيها باذن الله فيما بعد. برضو تحت بند تو بروموت تيتشنج وبايو ايثكس عملنا ويبينار تاني كان عنوانه فيوزنج هيومن بيشنت ان ميديكال اديوكيشن. ده كان بالتعاون مع الريجونال فيمر انستيتيوت في جامعه عين شمس. وبالنسبه للموضوع ان احنا نعزز الريسيرش ان بايو ايثكس، يعني لسه لحد دلوقتي في ناس بتفتكر ان الايثكس او لما بنقول بايو ايثكس ايثكس اوف ريسيرش. ناس كتير ما تعرفش ان البايو ايثكس في حد نفسها مجال بحث علمي. فبدانا نحاول نشجع الموضوع ده ان احنا نرسخ البرنسبلز او الناس يبقى عندها فكره عن طرق البحث العلمي في مجال البايو ايثكس. وبدانا اول ويبينار بالتعاون مع دكتور جون ايدس في جامعه بريستول، ادانا كان مقدمه عن الامبيريكال ريسيرش ميثودز ان بايو ايثكس. بالنسبه بقى للانكريزنج اويرنس اوف برنسبلز اوف بايو ايثكس امونج ريسيرشر، ده كان بالتعاون مع الانريك اللي هي الشبكه المصريه الاخلاقيه اللي هي لجان اخلاقيات البحث العلمي. عملنا ويبينار عن البايو ايثيكال فريم ورك فور ريسيرشرز، وحاولنا نتناول فيه يعني الحاجات المين فيلد، سواء كان كلينيكال ترايل او كان على انيمال ريسيرش او الهيومن ساينس ريسيرش. برضو من ضمن الانشطه اللي بيقوم بيها الكرسي التعاون مع هيئه اليونسكو في الاكتيفيتيز اللي هي بتعملها. سواء طبعا كان في وقت الكوفيد 19 كان في مبادرات كتير قام بيها اليونسكو، كان في منها حاجات في المنطقه العربيه وحاجات برضو على مستوى انترناشونال. حاولنا يعني كان لينا مشاركات في المجال ده. وكان في مؤتمر ان شاء الله، مؤتمر الثالث، المؤتمر الدولي الثالث الهاير اديوكيشن. الهاير اديوكيشن ده من ضمن المين سيكشن في اليونسكو، واحنا نظمنا فوكس جروب ديسكشن وقدمنا ورقه عمل ان شاء الله عشان نشترك بيها في المؤتمر ده. وكان لينا تعاون مع مكتب اليونسكو في بيروت برضه، كانوا منظمين مؤتمر ريليتد للريسبونس او الفاكسينيشن الكوفيد 19. وطبعا لينا تعاون مع مكتب اليونسكو في القاهره، دكتور بشر مشكور يعني قدم لنا فكره عن دور المكتب. انا مش هطول على حضراتكم، انا بس بعرض يعني فكره يعني شغل او بدي فكره عامه عن مجال عمل كرسي اليونسكو. بالنسبه للكولابوريشن وده اللي انا احب انوه عنه النهارده، احنا الحمد لله عملنا اتفاقيه تعاون مع الانريك اللي هي الايجيبشن نتورك اوف ريسيرش ايثكس كوميتي في 2020. انا بس ومن ضمن الحاجات بقى اللي عايزين ننشر النتوركينج ده بشكل اكبر، احنا عملنا كورس اليونسكو، عملنا ناشونال نتورك اوف بايو ايثكس. بندعو كل الناس اللي انترستد في مجال البايو ايثكس هم ينضموا لينا. احنا فاتحين الاشتراك ابلكيشن لاي حد عنده اهتمام من اي سبيشاليتي، سواء كان طبعا ريليتد للبايو ايثكس كعلوم، طب، صيدله، اسنان، علاج طبيعي، زراعه، بيطري، كل دي حاجات ليها علاقه بالبايو ايثكس. البايو ايثكس علوم الاحياء، ومعانا طبعا البيئه، كل الحاجات اللي تاثر على حياه الانسان بشكل عام من ضمن الفيلد اوف بيولوجيكال ساينس اللي ممكن تكون ليها اهتمامات مع البايو ايثكس. بجانب بقى الجوانب الفيلد الثانيه او التخصصات الثانيه اللي هي انترسكتنج مع البايو ايثكس، زي مثلا الشريعه والقانون والفلسفه والعلوم الانسانيه. فيا ريت انا ان شاء الله هسيب لينك للابلكيشن بتاع الناشونال نتورك، هسيبه في الشات بوكس، ويا ريت اي حد من الموجودين يعمل شير لللينك او يدخل على اللينك يملى ابلكيشن. احنا بنرحب باشتراك اي حد. انا مش هطول على حضراتكم، شكرا لكم جميعا وبرحب بيكم، وان شاء الله المؤتمر يبقى مفيد لكل الموجودين. ده الكونتاكت انفورميشن بتاعتنا، وشكرا جميعا. شكرا دكتوره حنان.
شكرا يا فندم. شكرا Professor Sonia for such an informative presentation. And now, with the ethics of new health technology diffusion and implementation, Professor Michel Daher, Professor of Clinical Surgery, University of Balmain, Chairman of Research Ethics Committee, IRB, University of Balmain, Vice Chair, National Committee for Palliative Care, Secretary General, Lebanese National Ethics Committee, St. George Hospital, University Medical Center, أشرفية بيروت لبنان. أهلا وسهلا يا فندم.
Good morning. Good morning,
Sir.
everybody. صباح الخير للجميع. I'm happy to be with you today. I thank the moderator for the kind introduction. And of course, I thank very much Professor Sonia for including me in this panel. And I thank also the University of Ain Shams and the chair of bioethics for inviting me to this meeting. I want first to say that my topic, the ethics of new health technology, will include the rules for the diffusion and the implementation of this new technology in the world. I declare no conflict of interest in presenting during this session. And of course, new health technology advance fascinate everyone, especially when the outcomes are spectacular as it is done in the media. The media are quick and sometimes too much quick to embrace medical advances, and increasingly patients and their family demands them. Talking about health technology as a definition, it is all the method that are included by healthcare professionals to promote health, to prevent the good health, and to treat diseases, and of course to improve and the quality of life of people. We have different categories of health technology. First, we have the existing technology, which is used now, and we are familiar with it. So we ask ourselves, when we have a good existing technology, why do we have to go for further new and evolving technology? We have the new technology that it is, we ask ourselves how to implement it into clinical practice, and what are the rules that will lead to this implementation. And of course, we have the evolving technology where we have the changes, and we don't know where to stop the evolution of this new technology, to which limit we should go in this evolving technology. Talking about the ethics of technology, of new health technology, we have to refer to the major principles in the Oath of Hippocrates, mainly the beneficence, non-maleficence, respect for the person, and respect its autonomy, and justice. All these principles go to one objective: to place the welfare of our patients above all else consideration. And here comes the challenges. What is the risk? Where is the justice, and who is responsible of this? As for the challenge of risk, we have to admit that the risk which is resulting from emerging technology must be acceptable in the practice. As for the justice and the benefits and harms, hello? Do you hear me?
Yes, Professor Daher, we hear you.
Thank you. Benefits and harms resulting from this emerging technology must be fairly distributed for poor and for rich, for North and South countries, and for all people. And it must be possible to help to see who is responsible when we have problems with this new technology. It is not easy to determine who is responsible when we have problems, because many hands are contributing to the development of technology. And it is difficult to identify one special person who is morally responsible. And here come the assessment of this technology. Before implementing this technology, we should have a profound assessment of it, where we study the medical, social, ethical, and the economical implication of its implementation and diffusion. It is a multidisciplinary field where all these policy analysis should be done previous to implementing this new technology. And come also the evaluation. Every technology should be evaluated before its implementations, and the evaluations considers and investigates whether something is doing what is supposed to be doing. And that's what we do in all approach to any new technology or method, or in our, I'm a surgeon. Also, we evaluate our act of surgery and other practice in medicine. The assessment is a step further, where we consider where it's worth to do it. When we study the cost effectiveness, when we study the result and so on, we have to know if the new technology is doing what is supposed to be doing, and consider the patient outcome in this assessment. And every time we have a new technology, we should respect the following ethical principles of clinical competence, where the person who is practicing the technology should be competent, have a good experience, have a good education and formation to practice in the good manner this technology. We have to respect the person and their decision, as it is in the oath of Hippocrates. We cannot impose any technology practice to a patient without his consent. And here the informed consent is very important to the patient before practicing any new technology. And at all time, we have not to be under pressure. We know that we have always external pressure, mainly financial pressures to practice and to use some technology. We should maintain the primary of the patient's need and not the institution, what is needed in the institution of if we have to use or abuse or misuse our technology when we are confronted to a new technology. Every person who is practicing the technology and implementing it should show his credentials. And here, every person, before being admitted to practice and to use a new technology, should demonstrate that he is a member in a good standard in his institution. He must have a good education and formation to this technology prior to using it, and he should have a good qualification and experience in the management of diseases which the technology is applied, and of course having special skills for doing a periodic assessment and evaluations of the results of his using of technology. And here come the concept of learning curve. For each new technology or new method, we have to put a learning curve, how many cases should be done and mastered by the person, by the using of the technology before practicing it on his patients. We have to put these statements every time we have an emerging health technology. We should respect the. So, hello. I'm sorry.
Hello.
The statement.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. We have a problem?
I don't think so. You can complete, sir.
Yeah, please proceed.
We have to put the statement on emerging health technology first and answering these 4 questions. First, had the new technology been adequately tested and for safety and efficacy? 2, is the technology at least as safe and effective as existing and proven techniques? Is the individual proposing to perform the procedure fully qualified to do so? And last but not least, is the new technology cost effective? To the first answer, it is easy to answer this question by controlled clinical trials and observations and publication and peer-reviewed scientific literature, where we demonstrate that this new technology is beneficial and is an add-on to the practice of medicine. 2, is the technology as safe? Yes. That's why we have to do many research studies on the safety, efficacy, and the need for this technology before implementing and before diffusing this new technology. And of course, comparison with alternative therapies to see the interest and the importance of this new technology comparing to the existing technology. If the individual, as for the individual, I think that the personal commitment of competency of the person is very important here. His credentials, his experience, his for continuing medical education. And of course, here we can say that in any country, the profession of medicine, the order of physician, let's say, or any other institution should put rules and control the credentials of people who are using new technology. Is the new technology cost effective? Here, many factors should be evaluated, and of course, to ensure that this is an appropriate new method and will be beneficial for patients, and compare it to other alternative, other technology and our other method. We cannot go without talking about the commitment of medical profession through its order of physicians, through its association of and societies regrouping these specialties to control and to maintain the highest professional and ethical standards, to oppose to all forms of discrimination in using this technology, and improving all the health of all people as citizens. Unfortunately, justice is a problem when we are confronting, and here we talk about economics, because money and finance are very important in using new technology, which is in general, it costs much to have the material, it costs much for education, and it costs much for functioning. And we don't have to forget that some people does not have health insurance. People are living in poverty, and some hospital fix hospital days for any disease, and the people cannot take advantage of this technology for its price, for its cost, and for the limitation of hospital stay that are in some countries. So where are we going? We are going to more and more and more evolving technology. I have to cite only these 3 or 4 new technologies where they are evolving: the robotics and its use in medicine, telemedicine and the information and the broad information in healthcare, cybersurgery, artificial intelligence, and new introduction to this. And I see that in the program, many of our colleagues are going to talk about the ethics of using these new technology, robotics, telemedicine, and artificial intelligence. I saw that we have sessions especially for this technology. And the future will be very, very, very active for clinical ethics. As long as we are have evolution in this technology, we will have problems of clinical ethics confronting to this new technology, like in transplantation, in genetic engineering, in reproductive biology, in gene therapy, in artificial intelligence. And also here, I see that in the program, many of our colleagues are going to talk about the ethical issues and the ethical concerns in these areas. In conclusion, I think that despite all these problems, high technology and humanity can coexist. And this will need a good collaboration between all stakeholders, between all people who are working in this domain: policymakers, economists, managers, healthcare workers, and their support group. This will lead to a good and kind and a good progress in implementing and in diffusing new technology in a good manner. And planning for services needs to recognize that service proliferation cannot go on forever. Where is the limit? Where we should stop of evolving in our health technology? And medical research here have a very important to plan, and Dr. Shokri, I think that she is going to talk about the importance of medical research in health technology. And we have to see that health technology sometimes will be available, but some people will not be able to use it or to take advantage of it for cost, for availability, and for many other reasons. Before I thank you very much for your attention, but if the moderator permit for me 1 minute more to talk to you about the anecdotic story. Most of us بيعرفوا قصة جان de La Fontaine, a writer, a French writer. عمل قصة السبق بين الأرنب والسلحفاة. كلنا بنعرف السلحفاة والأرنب، اللي هو عملوا سبق وبالآخر ربحت السلحفاة بالرغم من انه الارنب هو سريع كتير. هيدي قصتنا نحن مع الهيلث تكنولوجي، هي مثل سبق بين السلحفاة والارنب، وهون الاتكس هي السلحفاة. يعني بقصة جان de La Fontaine ربحت السلحفاة، ما بنعرف انه دايما تربح، بس هي ربحت حسب القصة، لأن على المداومة وعلى المتابعة وعلى المثابرة ربحت الأرنب اللي عم بيروح شمال ويمين ويركض شمال يمين ما يعرف وين. آخر شيء نتمنى انه الاتكس والهيلث تكنولوجي and evolving health technology work together and will arrive together to the end of the race. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And now with our prestigious guest, the lovely Professor Dina Shukri, Professor of Forensic Medicine and Toxicology, Cairo University, Head of the Department at the Armed Forces College of Medicine, Chair of the Central IRB Supreme Council of University Hospitals, talking about the clinical research in Egypt, laws and regulations.
Sorry for that. Thank you very much, Hanan, for your introduction. And the thanks is extended to Professor Dr. Sonia Azab for the kind invitation. And I was amazed with her activities in the field of the bioethics and research ethics. Let me say it's a very honor and pleasure to hear from Dr. Michel and to meet him even virtually. And we hope in the near future we are going to see each other as before. انتوا شايفين البرزنتيشن؟
أي فندم ظهر.
Okay.
تمام.
Here are the very important medical papyri ever known in history, Ebers, Edwin Smith, Harris, and Cahan, that contains lots and lots of research and innovation in the field of medicine that made Herodot to say, in medicine, the Egyptians leave the other far behind. My presentation today is about one sector of the clinical research, which is the laws and regulation. And I'm going to throw light on a new law of clinical research 214 to the year 2020 and executive regulation, which just released this month. To start with, the medical research is either the primary research or secondary research. The primary research is further subdivided into basic research, epidemiology, and clinical research, and this is what we are going to speak about. By definition, the FDA defined the clinical trial as a study involving the unapproved FDA-regulated test article, which might be drug, device, or biologics, on one or more of the human subjects in attempt to submit it later to the FDA as a part of application for marketing. The NIH have the similar definition of the clinical trial. And here are the fields of the clinical trial, which includes treatment, prevention, diagnostics, compassionate use, and the quality of life, which should conform to the good practices, which include the clinical practice, the good manufacturing practice, the good regulatory practice, and good laboratory practices. The phases of the clinical trial start with the testing of the human pharmacology and then the exploration of the therapeutic safety and efficacy and the confirmation with those therapeutics and new drug application to reach the post-marketing testing or therapeutic testing. What I'm going to throw light on that for each 5,000 to 10,000 screened articles, only 250 enter the preclinical studies, 5 entered the clinical studies, and only 1 got the FDA approval. And as for the position of Egypt in the clinical trials and the clinical research all over the world, it is a good position with the more than 6,800 clinical trial according to clinicaltrial.gov. So what is the situation before the new law? The situation of the ethics in research was conducted by the lots of medical and ministerial decrees, which govern the national GCP guidelines or the clinical trial evaluation SOPs regarding the biological or the pharmaceutical products. Others include the CRC or the clinical research regulations, the ethical approval, and the registration of IRB. And finally, in 2019, there is the launch of the Egyptian Drug Authority, or the EDA, and the new law for controlling the clinical research 214 to the year 2020 and its executive regulations. This law falls into 12 chapters with the 32 articles, which start with the definition and ended by responsibilities and penalties. And through those chapters, we have a trip, a navigation through all the members contributing in the medical research. And only 16 articles have been referred to the executive regulations, and here are the details of them. So to start with, there is a transition period for 1 year in order to fulfill the requirements of the new law. And the clinical trial, by definition, according to this law, is the research conducted on the human subjects for testing safety and efficacy of the medical interventions not approved by the international approved bodies, which is stated in the executive regulation as the EMA, FDA, TGA, Health Canada, and MEHRA. This law considers the private personal data as the clinical trial as well. The clinical research should be preceded by obtaining the informed consent from the subjects or the legal guardians. We have to submit a protocol which conform to the national and international ethical standards. And this research should follow the GCP standards and keep the rights of the enrolled subjects and the principal investigator and sponsors and the commitment for managing any adverse events and complication. And of course, there is no inducement of the enrolled subjects. As for the research on one of the vulnerable group, it is mandatory to be related to their medical illnesses or diseases. It should be scientifically and ethically sound. The informed consent from them and or the legal guardian should be obtained, and we have to take care and to prepare all measures to reduce the potential risks. What about the process of the review? The process of the review starts with the preclinical before the clinical trial, the preclinical trial, which should be approved by the EDA or Egyptian Drug Authority, and this will take about 60 days, and for the notification, another 30 days. So we start now the clinical trial, and the approval should be gained from the three main bodies: the IRB or Institutional Review Board, whether it is institutional or the central IRB, which we have two, one for the Supreme Council of University Hospitals, and the other one is from the MOHP or the Ministry of Health and Population. If the research is just the research thesis for master or MD, or it is a non-clinical trial, so you have to gain only the approval from the IRB. But if it is clinical trial, so it should get the approval from the IRB, EDA, and Supreme Council. Each body will take 60 days for giving that decision. And if there is no response after those 60 days, it is considered by default as approval. If there is a rejection, so they have to justify this decision. If the clinical trial, including the international multi-center studies, including the foreign countries, it should get the approval of the national security. Again, by the end of research, within 60 days, a new round of approvals from these three main bodies should be gained. So there is the launching of a new body, which is the Supreme Council for Reviewing of the Clinical Research. This body constituted 15 members, which assigned by different institutions and different ministries: Ministry of Higher Education, Ministry of Health, Scientific Research, Drug Authority, Defense, National Security, Ministry of Interior, Council of the State, Majlis al-Dawla, a public figure, and it will work for 4 years and can be extended only once. What are the duties? Database for medical research, putting and updating the research ethics standards, follow the review for the clinical trial protocols, inspection and monitor, complaint process and response, and law enforcement in case of suspension of the research, early termination or rejection of the renewal, or even prohibition of the further medical research for no more than 2 years if there is the violation of the articles of the law, and notification to authorities if needed. The IRB, my dear friend and colleague, Professor Dr. Aza Salih is going to speak about it. So what is the responsibilities of EDA? EDA, or the Egyptian Drug Authority, should evaluate and assess the preclinical studies, scientific review of drugs and biologicals, review of protocols, amendments, and results of the clinical trial, permission of the transition between the 4 phases of the clinical trial and stepping to the further stage of the further phase of the clinical trial, inspection and monitor. So what about the phases of the clinical trial permitted to be conducted in Egypt? It's only phase 3 and 4 clinical trial on condition that it is tested simultaneously with the one of the reference countries. And there is a review of the results of the preclinical by the EDA, and the first and second phases prior to the third phase by the EDA and Supreme Council as well. But we can conduct the second phase of the clinical trial if it is concerned with the regional or rare diseases and got the approval of the Supreme Council. So what about the subject right in this law? The rights is the withdrawal at any stage without any prejudice, the confidentiality of the data, the receiving a copy of informed consent, and incentives which shouldn't exceed the incentives to the inducement of the enrolled subjects. That's to say, it is only for transportation, work leave, and meals, and should be stated clearly, transparently in the informed consent and got the ethical approval. What about the PI or principal investigator? Should be qualified, good conduct, no sentence or a dishonorable attitude, no conflict of interest, and the responsibilities at large include the obtain of the approval and informed consent, applying protocol and registration at database, selection of the co-investigator and research team, and subject recruitment. And during the research, he has to conduct the research in one of the registered research sites, conform to law and regulations. He should be assure the previously approved any amendments of the protocol, which should be released to the subjects as well. Research reports, subject protection, publication of the results, and securing documents. What about the sponsor duties and responsibilities? The approvals, of course, and the research plan, recruiting of subjects and staff, and he has to train them well on the codes of the GCP, and he assured the implementation of those codes, and financing the research as well, reports, set agreements, and keep all documents for at least 5 years, and providing medical interventions during and after the trial. Others include the immediate notification, reporting of the serious adverse events that evolve during the research, insurance contracts, continue offering the treatment for people or for the subjects needed those treatment, and prove that it is mandatory for their case. And they can use the CRO or the contract research organization to do one of the works of the sponsor or the duties of the sponsor. And this CRO should be as well registered at the Supreme Council. The principal investigator should notify any serious adverse events to the sponsor, IRB, EDA, and Supreme Council within 24 hours, and all documents should be prepared within 7 days. In case of unexpected serious adverse events, it should be notified immediately to the Supreme Council. There is another council that is needed, which is a grievance committee أو لجنة التظلمات, which is assigned by the Supreme Council, the chair and secretary, the Higher Education, the Drug Authority, Ministry of Health and Population, Council of State, and this is the appeal should be applied within 60 days after the decision of the Supreme Council, and it take another 30 days for the response. The human biological samples, one of the very important issues within the clinical research studies, that the use of the human samples in medical research to be preceded by informed consent. The storage and reuse of the samples should be approved by the Supreme Council, and it should be stated, and we have to obtain a separate informed consent for the reuse and storage of them, and those samples should be stored in Egypt. Trafficking, commercialization of the human samples is prohibited by the new law, and the transfer of the biological samples outside Egypt is prohibited, but in some instances, it could be permitted after the approval of the Supreme Council and national security. What about the CRC or Clinical Research Center? It should be well equipped, and they should have an accredited lab, qualified team, registered at the Ministry of Health and Population. No private clinic is permitted by the new law to be included within the clinical research. Data registry should be at the Supreme Council as well as the Ministry of Health and Population. We came to penalties. Penalties if there is the conduction of the research without informed consent. If the sponsor of the PI violated the duties of the responsibilities listed in the law articles, or refrains from providing medical care. If the clinical research center not conforming with the requirement listed by law, or if there is a transfer of the human samples without the approvals. What are the penalties? It is both fine and imprisonment. So to take home message, we have to remember that there is a transition period for 1 year, the approval of the IRB, IDA, and Supreme Council only for the clinical trials. The approvals should take 60 days from each of those bodies, and if it exceeds this limit, it will be considered as approval. The phases that will be conducted in Egypt, phase 3 and 4 clinical trial, and should be conducted in one of the reference countries simultaneously. Phase 2 can be conducted if it concerns with the regional or rare diseases. Storage of the samples needs a separate informed consent, approval of the Supreme Council and national security. IRBs should be registered at the Supreme Council no more than 1 month after their construction, and the CRCs or the Clinical Research Center should register at MOHP or Ministry of Health and Population. We got lots and lots of regulations and laws, but what matters is ethics. So I leave you with the words of Ali Ahmed Bakathir: والعلم والدين والأخلاق إن جمعت لأمة بلغوا في المجد ما طلبوا ومن تجرد عن دين وعن خلق فليس يرفعه علم ولا أدب. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dina. And now, with our unique guest, Professor Maha Ghanem, Professor and Head of Department of Forensic Medicine and Clinical Toxicology, Chairman of Ethics Committee, Chairman of the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, Faculty of Medicine, Alexandria University, throwing light on the ethical and medico-legal challenges of telemedicine, a look at an Egyptian law project. تفضلي يا فندم.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your kind invitation and precious sessions. I want to share my presentation, but it seems that Dr. Dina have to get her session out. Yes, please.
Sorry for this.
Good morning, everybody. We are trying today to see what is going on in the project law. Okay, let us start with a small story. I have been part of it. During March 2020, we have a logo says, stay home, stay safe. All the visits to the clinics and the hospital has been down-regulated and limited. Okay, so some of our prestigious professors tries and initiatives, which is with good intention, of course. They make a public Facebook pages to treat patients and to respond to questions about the disease and about the manifestations. Okay, I have been spent few hours in this page, and second day I get out and I pronounce statements being head of the council of council unit in the faculty that this communication process wouldn't prevent any violation to the doctors or any punishment whenever there is a malpractice. This is the content. Thank God, at the same day, both of the Alexandria Syndicate and Syndicate of the Medical Persons in Egypt announced the same thing, that be careful, don't treat patients online except with special regulations. Okay, at that time I have an idea to do a research about us, about doctors, the physicians, what they know about the ethics and the legal challenges whenever they are using this telemedicine to treat the patient. It is just an idea, and we make it as a professors. We are always searching for evidence-based talking. We don't talk just an ideas. No, we don't. We need to have an evidence-based research. So we make a research, just a few slides. It was including specialist, consultant, general practitioners. So they are mainly involved in the practice position, a medical practice part. They take a part in the medical practice, part of from the teaching faculty and part from non-teaching. And we ask them, do you use this electronic communication process during COVID or before COVID? They are using this starting before COVID, but with different tools. All of them didn't have any license, just few of them. They didn't take any consent from the patients, and part of them have been using this process, electronic communication process, for marketing the clinics, for outpatient appointments on the internet, to assess symptoms. This is starting even before COVID process. And obtaining laboratory and radiological results, making referral to the patients, follow up the patients, consultation. All these activities has been taken care starting before COVID era, okay? So whenever we are asking them about their experience as regard in ethics and legal issues, they didn't most of them didn't take any consent from the patients and considered that the contact of the patient is an implied consent. Okay, and they said they have enough experience to determine the capacity of decision-making of the patient, even if they are not seeing these patients. Okay, and most of them, of course, didn't use any photos, and they need to have license, okay? And they think that the respect process is still mutual between the patient and the doctor, and it is almost the same with telemedicine or telehealth. But fortunately, we have an amazing experience that they have drawbacks on not only for the patients, but also for the doctors. They are suffering from violation of privacy. They're consuming time without fees on the response, on responding to the patients. They have blackmailing, defamation, hate speech, and accusation imports. Okay, this is what they are suffering from telemedicine. So finally, this is just a part, they don't know exactly what is going on with them if they have malpractice. Is it less penalty or more penalty with telemedicine? And they still, after all that, they think it is very beneficial to use telemedicine. So we make a lot of conclusions and recommendations, and at that point, thank God, many of our conclusions and recommendations has been involved in the law project. It is still under revision. Okay, the few materials is about talking the few articles. I'm sorry, the few articles, the first to fourth about this law, and it will be just 6 months to and going to register. What I'm concerned here from the definition part, okay, the manager can be a physician, dentist, therapist, pharmacist. It is somewhat vague. I didn't understand this properly. Secondly, they consider all the methods of communication, like Facebook, like whatever, WhatsApp, whatever, it is accepted. Okay, inspired that in our commentary or in our recommendations that the most acceptable method for a patient-doctor relationship is the video, because or the video conference, because both of them can be recognize each other, and this is a proper identification for both of them. The doctor can see the patient, can what we say, can consider his decision-making capacity, can whenever he's seeing his face, he can seeing something as a doctor, you know, in medical practice is beneficial for his condition. The other methods can be more proper for consultation, for changing drugs, for say whatever it is, sending laboratory or radiological investigations. So we are asking to change this place and to be more defined for this area. Part of this law project, they ask for or they oblige persons to making this practice through after licensing, which is very good, and we're asking for this also. Okay, and they put in Article 3 that the follow-up of the cases is the simple cases, and this is somewhat vague. I think they need to be more specific, and they insist that the first visit between the doctor and the patient should be face-to-face, not online from the start, and this is very good part. After that, they are talking about the medication and how they are going to write these prescriptions and make the pharmacist sell them to the patients, and this is a good part. Article 5 talking about the fees. It is somewhat just the asking for this service is paying 50,000, then the releasing of this licensing or approval of this licensing is almost 2,000, and then this will be renewed every 3 years with 100,000. I don't know if the clinics can pay for this or not, but it is something related to them, and if it is too much, I think they should ask for a change. Another good point that it should, in the license, should be determined what type of health service that will be provided, and no one can give his license to other except with approval of the administrative units or administrative sites. The privacy and confidentiality was very good in this law. Some articles are talking about how crippled people or challenged people, illiterate people can use these electronic facilities, and I don't know how it will be. I don't know. I don't understand how this will be applied or confirmed. Another issue in this law, the first, they prevent totally any using of the data of the patients or their photos or anything in research. But thank God they return back and say they can do it after approval of the patient. A part of this law is concerned with the services of medical selling to the drugs, and this is very good, and this is part of our recommendation also. Here we have, yes, this area for approval of the patient for using his data in research work. And here we have another one. It is the same, confirming that don't use the patient's data except after his total approval. And they are concerned with the privacy, and where there is no persons can be present if there is something like video conference during the applying of the medical service. Here they are coming to two parts which I don't understand properly. Here we have checking personnel for the clinics or for the hospitals that employing this service, and they will go to see all the medical records or the data or the equipment, okay, and this is need to be regulated or modified, say. There will be punishment for a period not less than 6 months, and with a fine with is minimum 50,000. The manager will be involved in this process if he is knowing that there is violation, and this is also good. Okay, no good intention in the process because we are responsible personnel. Still confirming that identification of both of doctors and the patient should be carried out, and the best method is the video conference, and this I think it is important to be involved in the project law. In my opinion, the drug should be classified to simple drugs and drugs group A, B, C, according to the necessity and according to the, let us say, it is dangerous drug or need to be sold in a specific regulation, and don't be, some drugs, as we know, need special prescription to be repeated. And I think this drug selling process or this drug communication should be regulated. Another point, we have seen a lot of doctors have been putting the photos of the patients on the communication issues like Facebook and like WhatsApp, and this should be confined. I think ethically it is not appropriate to make advertisement through if you are joining me in the visita or the visits for through online, I will be giving you something like a cadeau or gifts. I think it is inappropriate to do something like this. At the same time, the patient should know that every photo, every data he is putting to the doctor, even he is keeping his medical records properly, can be hacked. And he should share responsibility, and the doctor shouldn't be involved in something like this to break confidentiality. Thank you, and I hope I'm limited to my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, بروفيسور مها. بحب أنوه مرة أخرى إن الأسئلة ممكن تتكتب في الشات عشان نعمل لها discussion إن شاء الله في discussion time. دلوقتي we will meet our lovely professor Abir Zayed, Professor of Forensic Medicine and Clinical Toxicology, Faculty of Medicine, Cairo University, and Head of the Department of Forensic Medicine and Clinical Toxicology, Faculty of Medicine, Al-Nahda University, tackling the ethical issues or the ethical concerns of gender selection procedure. اتفضل يا فندم، منورانا. Dr. Abir?
Dr. Abir, please unmute yourself.
معلش I'm sorry.
ولا يهم حياتك يا فندم.
صباح الخير.
صباح
بشكركم
الجميل.
جدا جدا اللجنة المنظمة على رأسها الدكتورة سونيا والدكتورة حنان على الدعوة الكريمة، ويعني سعيدة جدا بوجودي وسط الكوكبة من علماء البايو اثكس طبعا في مصر وفي الوطن العربي. يعني نقبل كده ان شاء الله باذن الله تكون البانل والدiscussions والpresentations يعني موفقه ان شاء الله. My topic today is about ethical concerns of gender selection procedures. The gender of children, we all know that it is an important subject for parents in all cultures, and the attempts to control the sex of the offsprings or to know the sex of the expected baby is practiced long ago. In ancient Egypt, 5,000 years ago, the gender of the fetus was detected by pouring the woman's urine on grains of wheat and barley. If the barley grew first, this means that the baby would be a male, and if the wheat grew first, that it would be a female. In the modern era, sex selection techniques have been marketed under the title of family balancing, which endorsed so many questions about what it is, how it comes, and why are we in need to sex selection. The first crucial question is how come? It's a long ago practice. Sex selection was practiced with the help of traditional techniques that were successful in some instances as diet control, timing of the sexual connection, and by the development of amniocentesis in the mid-70s, this offered a scientific potential for prenatal determination of fetal sex. Together with the progressive of decriminalization of abortion that offered the choice about continuation or decontinuation of pregnancy that opened the door to sex-selective infanticide. Nowadays, with the aid of new technologies in the field of fertility and conception, many different methods have been emerged and invented that are used worldwide to select the gender of the expected child. These technologies are concerned with the preconception period or the post-conception period to achieve the attained child sex. With the growth of the technological procedure, more advanced techniques have been practiced, like the timing method and having sexual intercourse at specific times related to ovulation, or by Erickson method, and using higher concentration of sperms of the desired sex to increase the likelihood of conceiving that sex, or by sperm sorting in an advanced technique that sorts sperms by in vitro by flow cytometry, and this using a laser beam direct to the sperm to distinguish X and Y chromosome, and then automatically separate the desired chromosome. And on the top of all these technological growth appears the IVF, PGG, or in vitro fertilization and pre-implantation genetic diagnosis technique, and applying it to achieve the desired sex of the fetus. What about this technique? Those wishing to select the sex of the baby will undergo the same protocols and the same treatments as couples utilizing IVF for infertility problem. That is, a woman egg are retrieved and fertilized by the sperm to create embryos. And once the embryo grows to 6 to 8 cell size, a small laser incision in the egg membrane in the zona pellucida allows safe removal of one of the cells, and testing the cells shows its chromosomal makeup. Then the only embryo of the desired sex is transferred and implanted in the uterus. Any remaining healthy embryo that are not transferred can be cryopreserved for future use in expected pregnancy later on. Parents who have eggs or embryos in cryostorage are willingly to preserve them or to discard them as they wish. The second question is why we resort to that practice, and why we need to, and why that urge for sex selection. Medical reasons on the top, and this is the main cause for the emergence of sex selection by the process of PGG for avoidance of sex-linked genetic diseases such as hemophilia, muscular dystrophy, Fragile X syndrome, and this sex selection allows couples to choose female or unaffected male in order to prevent the risk of these genetic diseases. Family balancing, which is the huge marketing logo, where parents may be interested in selecting the sex of their child to balance the number of girls and boys in their families. And if they only wish to have one child, it can help them to have this girl or boy according to their desire. Patients may also select having boys or girls according to personal reasons. For example, it is not unusual for a mother to want a girl or a father to want a son. Ultimately, all reasons to utilize sex selection, including non-medical ones, are valid to parents who use it to build up their families. Another reason is local fertility restrictions and the one-child policy in China, where spontaneous rapid fertility decline, according to this policy, tend to compel parents who want both a son and a small family size to resort to this practice. And then preference for having sons, which is found in many cultures. Male offspring are desired for various reasons, as for inheritance aspects, for carrying on the family name, to provide support to their parents throughout their life when they are in old age. And after this brief introduction, we open the scope for the ethical dilemma or ethical consideration about this practice. The main ethical dilemma is the medical versus non-medical purposes for practicing this behavior or this procedure, and the application of these techniques to human that creates moral and ethical concerns in the opinion of others, while the advantage of sensible use of selected technology is favored by others. Those who are with this practice who are the pro subjects, including those providing the service, are arguing that sex selection is an expression of reproductive rights, and this allowing couples to make well-informed family planning decisions. and prevent the occurrence of unintended pregnancies and sex-selective abortion, and also minimize intimate partner violence and child neglect. Those who are opponents for that practice said that the social risk of sex selection outweigh the social benefits, and they consider this issue as disobedience of God by interfering in natural process of reproduction. The first issue considered by those opponents is the sex discrimination. Consider sex selection and gender preference a frank type of stigmatization and sexual discrimination and prejudice by favoring a sex over the other and diminishing the value of the opposite sex in the society. The second consideration is the sex imbalance in the community that can lead to a major problem, particularly in culture that place a higher value on one sex of a child, زي في China وزي في India. Let's have a look upon the demography of the biological sex ratio all over the world, where the blue areas are those countries with more females, and the reddish are the opposite, and the greenish is the same or equal number of females versus male. And this is another prospective map provided by the British Medical Journal for expectation after the practice of sex selection procedures later on after 100 years. They say that there is a cumulative number of missing females, too much in this area with red market demarcation. Another problem of concern is the left out embryos after the IVF procedure. They are either stored for future personal use in pregnancy. They may be donated to another couple in need of a healthy embryo. They may be donated for embryos for scientific research, or may be discarded. This is a very difficult decision for many people. And for that, we have to discuss these issues before sex selection procedure and refer patient for counseling if needed. What about the opinion of the primary care physicians? They said that sex selection led to invasive medical interventions in the absence of therapeutic indications. ده حقيقي، ده تداوي بلا علة. The same expression is said by many physicians. It's تداوي بلا علة. بكل بقى ما يحمله التداوي ده من أبعاد and side effects. Also, it is considered gender stereotyping that could result in child neglect of the lesser desired sex. And also, it was not found that it is a solution of domestic violence. Still, في domestic violence. وon top كمان بيحصل بقى sexual imbalance في البلاد اللي زي ما كنا استعرضناها على المابس. With all its dangerous and undesirable consequences for community, to the extent that some bioethicists has argued that governments should pay to couples to choose having female children. What about the legalization? It's legal or illegal? Worldwide, sex selection is prohibited. It is not approved in European countries, as it is considered a discriminatory practice against females and a type of female feticide in the modern era by getting rid of them. And exactly as وقت البنات اللي كان بيحصل زمان. Only 5 countries allowed for medical reasons only, and 31 European countries completely prohibit it. In America, there is free allowance for the procedures for natives and non-natives that open the door widely to fertility tourism from UK, from Canada, from Australia, and other countries. What about the religious aspect of the practice? Christians and the Catholic Church forbid sex determination of embryos even for medical reasons. And for Islam, the Islamic scholars and researchers have different opinion on the issue of fetal sex control. It varies from complete permissible practice to select the fetus of the sex of the fetus, or complete prohibition of sex selection, even for by medical intervention, which they considered unethical and unhuman. And the major of the scholars said that determining the gender of the fetus is permissible on medical basis, for social imperative limits, and after taking informed consent from the couple, and with ensuring complete safety and privacy of the parents. What about the condition in Egypt? In summary, Egypt, these interventions are widely practiced in many fertility centers. They are offered by the physicians as an extra service with extra payments, or as a bonus for couples seeking IVF as fertility treatments. يعني حتى بعض السنترز بيحسبوها بالتستنج كل امبريو، ولازم اتليست نتست مثلا 10 امبريوز في النمبر اللي هم محددينه، فبتبقى يعني هيوج كوست وتربح طبعا عالي للسنترز. بس في limited number of centers بتريفيوز performing the practice، وsome centers بتريكوست بقى individual fatwa for each couple from دار الإفتاء، which is automatically and easily provided بالتليفون عادي كده، ويجيبوا أو بزيارة بسيطة ويجيبوا الدوكيمنت اللي بتبيح السكس selection بالPGD. On the side of the consumers اللي هم الكابلز نفسهم، they are welcoming جدا البروسيجر. They may resort to a sex selection from the first pregnancy، يعني مش بيستنوا مثلا يلاقوا الفاميلي مش بالانسد فيعملوا كده، لا هو من الأول خالص يروحوا عاملين البروسيجر. طبعا الميل preference is widely spread. المشكلة في left out embryos اللي هي mainly discarded on the request of the parents, especially in cases of female embryos. مسألة الكراي preservation والكلام ده يعني مش متوفر أو available بالنسبة لنا. يعني مش عايزة أطول عليكم. في النهاية طبعا لازم نتذكر الآية الكريمة في سورة الشورى: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، يهب لمن يشاء إناثا ويهب لمن يشاء الذكور. صدق الله العظيم ونعم بالله، وأشكركم جدا لحسن استماعكم.
شكرا يا فندم، شكرا جدا ربنا يبارك في حضرتك. And now with our lovely godmother, Professor Siham Fouad Abdelal, Professor of Forensic Medicine and Clinical Toxicology, Faculty of Medicine, Ain Shams University, enlightening us about the ethics of biomaterials. دكتور سهام حضرتك معانا يا فندم؟
دكتور سهام حضرتك سامعانا؟
حضرتك بس اعملي unmute، واستأذن دكتور عبير تقفل الشير سكرين.
أنا قفلتها اوريدي.
ماشي يا فندم، بس مش عارفة ليه باينة.
انت سامعيني كده؟
يا فندم
سامعين بوضوح.
طيب الدكتورة سونيا هي اللي هتعمل انا بعتها لها علشان هي تبقى، عشان انا خايفه يكون عندي هنا التكنيكال، ولا انا افتحها من عندي مش عارفه.
حضرتك ممكن تفتحيها؟ طب نجرب.
بس لازم اخرج من
لا حضرتك بس هتصغري الزوم، يعني تعملي مينيمايز مش تقفليه.
هقفل. حاضر. كده ظهرت.
ممكن نرجع للزوم بقى تاني من غير ما نقفل البرزنتيشن؟
اوكي نرجع للزوم. مش عارفه ارجع ازاي يا ولاد.
حضرتك في مربع صغير ظاهر في الجنب كده الزوم ولا لا؟
انا عندي الشاشه نفسها باينه في الجنب. الشاشه
طيب
اللي
ممكن
هي
نكبرها؟
نعم
ممكن نكبرها، حضرتك هتلاقي فيه كده سهم اخضر طالع.
سهم اخضر طالع، ايوه
ممكن ندوس عليه.
ايوه.
اوكي.
أيوة.
تحت بقى هنلاقي بار كده موجود مكتوب فيه شير سكرين، وسهم لفوق لونه اخضر.
ايوه
تمام، ممكن ندوس عليه ونختار بعد كده من الايكون اللي هتتفتح لنا نختار البرزنتيشن.
اوكي.
تمام يا دكتور. ممكن نفتح
العدد
البرزنتيشن تاني.
هو احنا محتاجين نقفل السماعة، في حد فاتح، في echoing، في echoing. ايوه شكرا.
دكتور سيام حضرتك سامعانا دلوقتي؟
انا عملت شير، ما اعرفش ده من عندي ولا من الدكتوره سامي اللي انتوا شايفينه.
لا، من عند حضرتك. فدكتور سيام.
من عند حضرتك يا فندم.
طب خلاص ممكن نكمل الدكتوره سيام تبتدي تتكلم وانا اعمل لها سلايد روتيشن.
اوكي، ما احنا مش سامعين دكتور سيام.
دكتور سيام بليز unmute yourself.
ايوه كده سامعيني؟
سامعين حضرتك كويس. ممكن
كده سامعيني؟
يا فندم منورون.
مش ممكن يعني.
دكتوره سيام انا عملت شير، حضرتك اتفضلي وانا هقلب السلايد. اتفضلي.
معلش يا جماعه انا عندي تكنيكال يعني بروبلم، مش عارفه ليه في الموضوع دوت، وهي الحقيقه اول مره انا اشارك يعني كهوست او كمشارك كبينالست في زوم. انا دايما ببقى جست، فعشان كده يمكن المره دي الدنيا ملخبطه معايا شويه، فاعذروني يعني الزملاء الاعزاء، وطبعا يعني برحب بيهم كلهم لانهم كلهم حبايبنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اول اعملي كليك بقى لاول سلايد لو سمحت يا دكتور، اللي هي الethical issues of concerning biomaterial science. اعملي كليك. First of all, we have to know what is a biomaterial. Biomaterial is defined as any non-vital, natural or synthetic.
وكده الشير اشتغل من عند حضرتك غالبا.
يعني انا اللي اشتغل.
خلاص خليني انا اكمل. اتفضلي حضرتك انا معاكي. اوكي.
مش عارفه بقى. Biomaterial is defined as any non-viable, natural or synthetic biocompatible substance which can be used for any period of time to repair, augment or replace any tissue, organ or function of the body in order to maintain or improve the quality of life of an individual without causing any toxic reaction. And the term biocompatible mean that it is intended to for interaction in the body. Why we are in need of biomaterials? Because human tissues and organs sometimes fail to perform the regular action due to either genetic defects, age, illness, trauma, diseases, or injuries. And some of this condition don't respond to the conventional treatment as medication or physiotherapy. So we have to replace this damage by other means, which by using devices or by using by implantation of devices as heart, skin, kidney, or any other device for treatment or for diagnosis or for repair. ايوه اعملي كليك يا next. What is the biomaterial science? Biomaterial science is defined as that it is a branch of biomedical engineering dealing with the material used for medical device, and it is not such one science. It is a multidisciplinary science to achieve the goal of the biomaterial using for the patient beneficiaries. So it is a multidiscipline, having the material science and engineering with chemistry, medical science, biophysics, biology, and the molecular biology to achieve the biomaterial necessary for a specific function. Next. History of biomaterial, it is very, very old, from the ancient Egyptians, Chinese, and Romans, using gold in dentistry, and then they are used for bone plates, metal alloys, or hip prosthesis was used, mechanical heart valve, cemented joint replacement, and in 1976, the FDA approved from the first time testing and the production of biomaterials, and the same year it was using the first artificial heart was implanted. Next, the evolution of biomaterial in the field. First of all, they are using inert material for minimal reaction interaction. And then the second generation using bioactivity resorbable materials, controlled reaction with the physiological environment as bone bonding or drug release. And lastly, there is regenerate functional tissue for proliferation, differentiation, or production and organization of cell as stem cells and gene therapy, as we say. Next. Biomaterials classification. There is natural biomaterial used, hard as bone or soft as skin, or cells as stem cells, or synthesis biomaterial, ceramic, metallic, polymeric, or composite, which are formed from more than one material, or combined biomaterials, either natural or natural synthesis, to opt for its function and necessary for the beneficence of the patient. Next. The previous classes of materials have different atomic arrangement, so their diversity in structural, physical, chemical, and mechanical lead to offer many alternative application in the body. And application to the body either by using a single material only, or combination of one or more than one material. Next. السلايد دي يا دكتوره سونيا في جنب كل uses of the biomaterial في example ليها، فيبقى حضرتك تدوسي عليها لما اقول replacement of diseased or damaged parts. Yes. Click. Examples of biomaterial used in orthopedic application include joint replacement, bone cements, bone defect fillers, fracture fixation plates, artificial tendons and ligaments. حضرتك تعملي كليك بقى على الايكون اللي تحت دوت عشان نرجع تاني عشان نرجع لليوزز. assist in healing، دوسي على اللي جنبها لو سمحتي. البون سكرو and the plates for orthopedic, and the bandage for improving healing using for injuries, which are the bandage. سامعيني كده؟
يا دكتور تمام.
طيب في assist in healing bandages which have nanoparticles of silver which promote the healing of injuries. Improve function like the heart valves icon, heart heart valves, or the contact lenses, corneal implants, artificial corneas, intraocular lenses, and for dentistry, the restorative and the screw for implantation of teeth. اللي بعدها يا دكتورة سونيا. لا تحت لا
هو انا بعمل، بس هو بياخد وقت الانيميشن على بال ما يظهر.
معلش بقى، انا والله بعتذر عن اللي بيحصل ده، بس غصب يعني مش عارفه ايه اللي حصل. هناخد الفيلد دايجنوزس. الدايجنوزس اللي هي لايك الستنت. مش عارفه بقى، ما علينا. يبقى عندي هنا biomaterial used in manufacture diagnosis probes and casters. and بعد كده اللي بعده يا دكتورة سونيا الكوزمتكس diagnostic اللي قلناها. التريتمنت او الكوزمتكس تريتمنت اللي هي drug delivery as contraceptives and for diabetes and for anticoagulant drugs. اللي بعدها الكوزمتكس. Cosmetics and artificial eye or silicone for breast for reshaping, and ear, nose, and skin. Next. خلاص. Next يا أيوة. The ultimate goal of biomaterials in medicine is to treat, improve, or substitute tissue organs or body function. Such goals can be accomplished by integrating the properties of materials, either mechanical, physical, or chemical, or the nature of the system on it to be used, device architecture, and physiological specification. So the biomaterial application method must combine the chemical and the mechanical feature of the biological system in order to achieve the required functional results. So it is a matter of integration of many disciplines for the beneficence of the patient to get a device opted to the function. Okay. اللي بعده يا دكتورة. Next. This is a summary for the path from the unidentified need for something to its function to a clinical product and some of the disciplines that facilitate the development process. It starts by the identification of the need, and it is for treat a condition or replace an organ. So we need a physician or a dentist or researcher, inventor, and entrepreneur for integration or for starting the device design by the engineering to be implement, and the physician for consultation of the structure of the design, which must be capable for the function needed. And the material sciences to start to choose the probable material needed for this function. And after that, you have the material to be tested by next slide اللي بعدها يا دكتورة. أيوة, material testing. In summary, for any material to be qualified, that must be biocompatible as non-toxic, non-carcinogenic, non-allergenic, non-pyrogenic. So we have to test the material for many aspects. For its physical and chemical properties. Physical property for its color, temperature, its resistance, and the chemical properties as biodegradation, photoreactivity, and its pH, everything related to its chemical properties, and the mechanical properties according to its elasticity, its resistance, it is compressible or not, it is flexible or not, and the color, the surface itself, to opt to the function that needed. Have stable durability for the period it is intended for. It is according to its biodegradation, because sometimes the material, the biomaterial used could be changed after a while, or after or it must be used for only for hours or for years. So its durability must be tested. Be easy to process with the available techniques, and also be sterilized currently without any defect, and also be cost effective and accessible, because it is very sophisticated manufacturing, so it must be accessible to all people for the ethical concern or concept for medical patient or patients. اللي بعده next. What are the questions to be answered for using or for preparing or for the procedure of manufacturing the biomaterial until it reaches the physician, and from the physician to the patient? Will the biomaterial be safe or potentially harmful to the body in the near term and long term? And this could be testing by the properties, the specific properties of the material itself, and also by the in vitro experimentation, where there is extracted cells from the human body and kept in environment or culture to be survived by laboratory condition of water, temperature, and organic and inorganic substance to keep the cells not damaged or survived, and also with bacterial and fungi culture to know its resistant or the lethal effect, or it's effective to combat or to not to colonize such conditions. And also in vitro, and we choose cells from different tissues, and we choose a great number of cells to assess the biological behavior of the cell, not of the material, not to be not pyrogenic, not allergic, and not toxic. But for the toxicity, sometimes we need that the biodegradation of the biomaterial be toxic, especially in the smart bomb using for cancer treatment, because the toxic material may be used to kill cancer cells. Will data obtained during testing on animals justify the suffering and sacrifice of living creatures? This is an ethical issue from the activists that have the idea that the animal have the same right of human being, so we have to not to sacrifice or to suffer, may suffer to the animals for the human being. So we have to, the researchers have to use either computer models instead of the animals, or the in vitro by using the cell culture will be abundant to reduce the number of animals used in the experiment. But animals are very important because they are used for the, especially for the toxicity of the biomaterial, either acute, chronic, or subacute, or mutagenicity, or in a carcinogenicity. So we cannot use animals. We cannot يعني مش معقول ما نستخدمهمش، يعني لازم نستخدمهم. When evaluating a new biomaterial product, what should be balance between sustaining life and the quality of life issue? There is balance between just sustain life and the quality of life is not good, or we have to use only biomaterial for quality, for improving the quality of life, improving the quality of life. And here there is an ethical issue for it is a futile treatment, or it is for conflict of interest, or for abuse, or for improving the quality of life. And this is an issue, an ethical issue, which may make dilemma. Will professional and the financial interest by researchers result in conflict of interest with which could taint trial data? Yes, of course, there is external pressure from agencies or from the sponsorship, because the government cannot fund this procedures or this field of biomaterial engineering, because it is very costly and very expensive. And so there is private companies which will help this field, and they can press on the researchers or on the engineers to get an improper biomaterial device or something like that, and to taint the trial data. What should be the role of regulatory agencies? The regulatory agencies like FDA, and worldwide there is many agencies which are responsible to supervision for every step of the manufacturing and until it is in the market to be used. And there is a slide showing that should financial problem for the companies that will help that it can charge what the market will bear, because when it can begin the manufactured or and then they stop it because they cannot bear the market. Should access to biomaterials be determined by medical need or ability to pay? There is the equity and the discrimination, which is one of the concepts of the ethical, that justice must be for all. Justice must be for all medical person, for all patient, and if for the who can pay. How does society ensure that humans living in the third world have access to current advances in biomaterial applications? It is a financial problem also. And also we have how does the scientific advances area for biomaterial adhere to religious doctrines, which are sometimes at odds with those advancements. And there was a debate in the last months about using the valves of pigs for human being or not, because some religious jurists accept that and another refuse that. Next, Dr. Sonia. For the research issues, ethical research issues, there is two types of codes of ethics applied in organization. Either a compliance-based, set out guidelines for the new quality control standards and the review boards and technology assessment to prevent the danger to the public. So the researchers or the manufacturers working in this field have to set out the guidelines for conduct and also lay out penalties for violation. And the benefit of patients should be the main motivation for conducting biomedical research in a scientific manner. If ethical duties of a researcher as well defined, then regulation of research through human and moral means become possible. So there is two types of codes of ethics. Ethics related to the institution or the organization where the biomedical engineer is working, and they have to to follow it, and also the value-based, it discusses standard of responsibility, conduct, and they relate to the welfare of the public goods. Okay, so next. لا next بقى اللي بعدها، لان انا الكلام ده انا عملت اختصرته يعني. next يا دكتوره سونيا.
عملته والله يا دكتوره، بياخد وقت.
معلش الايشوز ريليتد تو انيمال موديلز اللي انا كنت يعني بدات فيه واتكلمت فيه، ان هو في ناس طبعا اليوسفول اوف انيمال ستادي يبقى biomaterial scientists and engineers must point to the public how animals are very important or very useful for contributing to the improvement in the length and quality of human life, and alternative models to animals like computer models and the use of tissue culture, يعني abundant tissue culture may reduce the number but we cannot eliminate the need for animals experimentation. Next. Next. ايوه، واللي بعدها بقى كمان. هاتي اللي بعدها. طيب. What are the role of the regulation of medical devices and supervision and follow every step for every phase of the manufacturing and until it is for pre-marketing and through marketing. FDA and other organizations have developed guidelines for designing and testing biomaterials that provide classification systems to impose different controls on biomaterial devices. Two, the amount of risk presented. They are classified into three classes. The class 1 least risk, such as adhesive bandage and hospital beds. Class 2, intermediate risk as oxygen mask, blood pressure cuffs, powered wheelchairs. Class 3 devices are of highest risk, artificial heart valves or other implant. And the valid scientific evidence, safe for the benefit outweigh the maleficence, and effective. The use must be for improving the quality of life of the patients. Next. برضو next اللي بعدها يا حبيبتي. Manufacture issues. Biomaterial may fail in vivo due to numerous reasons, varying from defect to biological degradation. So it has to be analyzed if it is improper or the production that has limitation. It must be well analyzed and well to reach the as possible the cause or the reason of failure. And if there is limitation of using, this risk must be notified to the physician or to the clinician used to know the outcome and the limitation of the biomaterial, if it is completely appropriate or inappropriate at all, not to be used until the failure or the mistake could be solved. Next. اللي بعدها يا حبيبتي. اللي بعدها يا أيوة. الconflict of interest بيبدأ from the sponsor or the private sectors which will be dealing with the manufacture or the fabrication of the device, so they can have their own pressure on the bioengineering, on the design, and the company or the investigator having financial gain from a research can be biased. To avoid this possibility, double-blind studies should be carried out, and also the Biomedical Society should develop guidelines to avoid bias and the conflict of interest between the research investigator and the company involved in such investigator. Clinicians also need to be aware of the potential danger or the limitation and the outcome of using biomaterials not properly tested and should not be swayed or biased by promotional pressure marketing agents. Next. Next, أيوة. I will not talk about the clinical trials or issues related to clinical trials because all of us know well about them. اللي بعدها يا سونيا، دكتورة سونيا. Engineers ethics and the medical ethics together have to reach to the respected autonomy of the patient, beneficent, non-maleficent, and justice by the ethical standard serving of the society, assessment of the competence by the professional group and authorized group. Next. Recommendation: scientists, engineers, clinicians, lawyers, insurance, hospitals, universities, regulators, educators, and all societies and foundations practicing biomaterial science obligated to adhere to the principles of ethical conduct, honesty, integrity, fairness, and equity. Next. Home take message: uphold and enhance the honor, integrity, and dignity of the profession, starting from the need of the device until it is in the market for the patient. Hold the biosafety aspect of the device's use, delimitation, and outcomes. Clinicians must be aware of the potential danger of biomaterials because even there is no nil harm for the using of biomaterial. Perhaps in the site where it is implanted, it did not lead to any harm, but it may lead to systemic hazards. Ensure that the patient's rights of beneficence, non-maleficence, and autonomy are protected. Inform the patient of the source of the graft material, and the patient may have some religious reservations against certain types of grafts. Avoid futile, unnecessary treatment, especially in cosmetic field. Avoid financial and other conflicts of interest related to the profession. And I am sorry for the technical problem. وأنا بعتذر جدا طبعا عن اللي حصل مع البرزنتيشن بتاعتي، بس يعني أأمل يعني إني أكون قدرت أوصل يعني حاجة بسيطة كده for the ethical issues for biomaterials.
خالص حضرتك نورتينا وزودتينا، ربنا يبارك في عمر حضرتك. And now with Dr. Hani Slim, Head of Dermatology and Venereology Department, IRB Vice Chairman at National Hepatology and Tropical Research Institute, Coordinator of the Egyptian Network of Research Ethics Committee, talking about the ethical guideline issues in human genome editing research. تفضل يا فندم.
السلام عليكم. I want to express my great gratitude for Dr. Sonia and for Ain Shams University and UNESCO Chair for invitation of me for this important topic about ethical guideline issue in human genomic editing research. My presentation is...
Dr. Hani, please go full screen.
I will test. هو مفترض ان انا فول سكرين، هجرب طريقة تانية.
Current Egyptian regulation on practicing this is This is no Egyptian law including conditions for employment or keep employed. The language is
يا ريت
كده فول
كل
سكرين.
يس يا فندم، يا ريت كل زملائي يعملوا ميوت.
اوكي.
شكرا جزيلا. اتفضل يا فندم.
Today we'll talk about the current situation, the guidelines and gene editing controversy, and what about future, especially in Egypt. Human genome editing and emerging technologies that are designed to benefit human health and by prevent, to treat, or enhance gene editing technology can be used to change person DNA by adding, removing, or alternating genetic material at a particular location. And if you return back to WHO definition of health, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of a disease or infirmity. في 2019 كان عندنا باحث صيني اللي هو هي جوانكيو، ده أعلن في الوقت ده على أول بيبي تم تعديله جينيا. هما فعليا كانوا توأم بنتين، مفترض ان الوالد بتاعهم مصاب بالاتش اي في، وهو كان في نوع من الجينات بتعمل نوع من الوقايه من الاتش اي في، وبالاتفاق مع الاسره قام بعمل تعديل جيني للزيجوت بتاع التوأم، بتعديله لاضافه الجين المفترض انه يعمل وقايه من الاتش اي في. الموضوع ده تم اعتقد في 2018، بس في 2019 الصين اعلنت، هو طبعا هو ما كانش طبيب، هو بايوفيزيست، حكمت عليه ب3 سنين سجن واعتقد ما يقترب من 1,000,000 جنيه مصري غرامه على ان هو عمل illegal medical practice، وكمان حكمت على الباحثين المساعدين ليه. الاخطاء اللي ارتكبها الباحث الصيني في الوقت ده، اول حاجه انه هو الساينتفك فاليديتي بتاعه الفكره بتاعه البحث ما كانتش فاليد، والميديكال نيسيستي ما كانتش موجوده، لان احنا مش متاكدين ان اضافه الجين ده كانت هتعمل بريفنشن بالاتش اي في بالنسبه للاوف سبرينج بالنسبه لنا، وفي نفس الوقت هو ما خدش الايثيكال ابروفل من لجنه الاخلاقيات في المؤسسه بتاعته، وده اللي ادى الى الحكم على الباحث الصيني. في نفس السنه كان عندنا انجاز قوي جدا بعلاج اول حاله سيكل سيل بيشنت في امريكا اسمها فيكتوريا جراي عن طريق تقنيه كريسبر، اللي هي صرحت في الوقت ده ان كانت بتعاني من نوبات الالم المتكرر من سيكل سيل انيميا، وبتتمنى ان بعد علاجها بالجين اديتنج ان جميع المرضى المصابين بالسيكل سيل انيميا يحصلوا على نفس نوعيه العلاج اللي هو كان بالنسبه لها سحري. لكن للاسف في 2021 في فبراير الشركه المسؤوله عن البحث ده قامت بايقافه، لان في 2 من المرضى اللي تعالجوا بنفس التكنولوجي اللي اتعالجت منها فيكتوريا ديفلوب كانسر. هم طبعا كان في انسرتينتي ناحيه هل الكانسر اللي هم اصيبوا بيه ليه علاقه بالجين اديتنج ثيرابي اللي هم خدوه او لا، بس اعتقد في نوفمبر بدا يحصل اخبار ان الجين اديتنج ثيرابي ما كانش ليه علاقه بالكانسر اللي هم اصيبوا بيه، بس لحد دلوقتي الدراسه دي هولتد ومش شغاله، مع ان هي كانت ادت فيري بروميسنج ثيرابي للسيكل سيل انيميا ديزيز اللي احنا عارفين قد ايه بيتعذبوا من نوبات السيكل سيل ديزيز. نقدر نتخيل ان احنا دلوقتي فقط شايفين التيب اوف ذا ايسبرج اوف الجين اديتنج، لان هو فعليا العلم القادم الفتره القادمه. كريسبر اللي هو كلاستر ريجولاري انترسبيس شورت بلندروميك ريبيت، او باللغه العربيه هي التكرارات العنقوديه المتناظره القصيره منتظمه التباعد، هو دايما باسوشيتد ببروتين 9. طبعا في انذر بروتين بس بروتين 9 الاكثر استعمالا. الميكانيزم بتاع كريسبر اصلا موجود في البكتيريا، وبتستخدمه البكتيريا بشكل دفاعي ضد الفيروس لما يهاجم الدي ان ايه بتاعها عشان تقص الفيروس من الدي ان ايه اللي اصيب. العلماء اللي هم حصلوا على جائزة نوبل خلال السنتين اللي فاتوا اللي اكتشفوا التكنولوجي دي قدروا يكتشفوا ان احنا ممكن نستخدمها عشان نقص الدي ان ايه. كريسبر بيبقى عباره عن ار ان ايه سيجمنت بتخش في يونت معينه، وباستخدام الكاس 9 اللي هو البروتين بتقص جزء من الجين في المنطقه دي اللي هو اللي احنا عايزين نشيله، وفي نفس الوقت احنا ممكن نضيف ريبيت او جين احنا محتاجينه في المنطقه دي، فنحصل على بنفيت اضافي. مش بس ان احنا نشيل الديزيز، ان احنا ممكن نحط النورمال جين مكان الجين المصاب اللي احنا عايزين نشيله. الايثيكال كونسيرن، الاكيوسي بتاع الكريسبر لسه مش ويل استابليشد، الافشنسي عليها مشكله، السبيسيفيتي بتاعه الجين اللي احنا هنشيله والجين اللي احنا هنحطه ممكن يبقى عليها مشكله. عندنا قلق ان احنا لما نعمل تصليح في حته معينه واكتشفنا ان فيها خطا، الريفرسابيلتي تاني هتبقى فيها مشكله. او ان احنا في بعض الاحيان، وطبعا الكريسبر تكنولوجي مش بس تطبيقاتها في اليومن، تطبيقاتها على حاجات كتيره، ان احنا مش هنقدر لما نبتدي بالتكنولوجي دي ان احنا نبدا نحصرها وان الامور ممكن تخرج عن السيطره. السيفتي عليها مشكله، وفي نفس الوقت في ديبيت رهيب ان احنا لما نعمل جين اديتنج لسوماتيك سيلز او ان احنا نعمل جيرم سيل جين اديتنج، لان هي مختلفه، لان هي هتورث الصفه الجينيه للاوف سبرينج بتاعنا. الجين اديتنج ممكن يعمل undesirable immune reaction، ممكن في بعض الاحيان targeting a wrong cell، ده ممكن يعمل لنا another disease او ممكن يسبب لنا في بعض الاحيان كانسر او tumorigenicity. وممكن في نفس الوقت ان احنا الفيكتور فيروس اللي احنا بنستخدمه اثناء الكريسبر هو نفسه يعمل لنا نوع من انواع الانفكشن. السؤال، هل لجان الاخلاقيات والبير ريفيود كافيين ان هم يحددوا الجانب الاخلاقي والعلمي الخاص بالكريسبر والجين اديتنج ولا لا؟ ده السؤال اللي العالم كله بيحاول يجيب عليه. وهل نعمل ريجوليشن ولا ما نعملش؟ وزي ما شايفين هنا في السلايد دي الخريطه العالميه للريجوليشن بالنسبه للثيرابيوتيك والجيرم سيل جين اديتنج. العلامات الخضراء اللي فوق اللي هي الدول اللي عندها نسبه سماح عاليه بريجوليشن ضعيفه جدا. بالنسبه للجانب اللي هو في اسفل الجدول اللي هم باللون الاحمر اللي عندهم الريجوليشن قويه وصعبه وعامله ريستريكشن كويسه. فوق هنلاقي دوله زي اليابان وروسيا من الدول اللي عندهم السماح، في حين ان احنا هنلاقي الاي تحت وامريكا موجوده في منطقه المنتصف. طبعا احنا ما عندناش دول، اسرائيل موجوده برضو في الدول اللي بتعمل سماح، ودي حاجه لازم ناخدها برضو في الاعتبار المنافسين الاقليميين بالنسبه لنا. الابيليتي بالنسبه لنا ان احنا نمانيبيليت جينوم using CRISPR had brought a series of ethical and social questions, and this is an issue we need to discuss. Gene editing remain controversial, with discussion ongoing as whether or not we should allow it or not. There is a variation or a lack of regulation around globe and even in Egypt, and debate about how to implement the oversight. احنا عندنا 3 طرق ان احنا نشتغل بيهم. الطريقه السهله ان احنا نعمل الاونس لاي نوع من انواع الجين اديتنج، او ان احنا نعمل منع كامل لاي جين اديتنج ثيرابي او ريسيرش، او الطريقه الوسطيه ان احنا نعمل نوع من التعامل الحذر مع النيو تكنولوجي اللي موجوده. كل واحده من ال3 دول ليها البنفيت بتاعها وليها المضار. الالاونس فور شور هيدينا ادفانس اوف ساينس، هيدينا فرصه ان احنا نتيك كنترول اوف اور بيولوجيكس، وان احنا حسب في بعض النظريات العلميه بتقول ان البحث لازم يبحث كيس باي كيس، لان احنا ما نقدرش نعمم ريجوليشن كامله على كل انواع الابحاث، وان احنا ما ينفعش ان احنا نحرم المجتمع بتاعنا من البنفيت اللي احنا شايفينه اللي ممكن يجي من الجين اديتنج. وان احنا لو منعنا زي ما حصل في حاجات تانية، ده هيخلي المرضى بتوعنا اللي عندهم مشاكل او جيناتيك ديزيز يطلعوا بره ويعملوا ما يطلق عليه ميديكال توريزم في الدول اللي احنا شفناها فوق، اللي عندها هي باللون الاخضر اللي هي عندها سماح بالنسبه للتعامل مع الجين اديتنج. المنع على الجانب الاخر هيأخر العلم، وهو طبعا ممكن يحمينا من الريسك اللي موجوده، ويحترم فكره ان السيفتي فيها مشاكل، وان لحد دلوقتي ان الموضوع علميا ديباتابل ومفيش نتيجه قاطعه. الاسلوب الحذر اللي هو البريكوشنري اتيتيود، هو في نفس الوقت هو ما بيعملش منع، وبيحترم التكنولوجي اللي موجوده، وبيبيز خطوه بخطوه بيزد على البحث اللي احنا قدامنا ونوعيه الابحاث اللي احنا هنسمح لها ان هي نشتغل بيها في المرحله الحاليه، او ان احنا ناجل الاشتراك فيها لمرحله مستقبليه لما تثبت النجاح العلمي الكافي والسيفتي بتاعها اللي احنا نقدر نعتمد عليه. خلينا نقول احنا عندنا برنسبل واضحه وصريحه في كل حاجه ليها علاقه بالتعامل مع البشر. احنا محتاجين نحترم الاوتونومي، بنفسنس، نون ماليفيسنس والجاستس، ونقدر نضيف عليهم لو هنشتغل على الهيومن جينوم للترانسبيرنسي اند هيومن ديجنيتي. دول حاجتين نقدر نضيفهم علشان يبقوا ست برنسبل محتاجين نحترمهم واحنا بنشتغل مع الهيومن جينوم والجينوم اديتنج. بس لو اتكلمنا عن الاوتونومي، الحاجه اللي محتاجين نفكر فيها الفرق بين السوماتيك سيل والجيرم سيل، لان احنا لو غيرنا في الجيرم سيل احنا مش بس غيرنا في الشخص اللي هو ادى الموافقه، احنا غيرنا في الاوف سبرينج بتاعه. هو مين المسؤول عن الاوتونومي بتاع الافراد المستقبليين؟ الابناء. هل ان احنا نعمل تعديل جيني يورث بقرار الاباء لوحدهم؟ هل الاسر محتاجه تتدخل؟ هل الاطفال الصغيرين هناخد منهم موافقه؟ دي حاجه محتاجه نقاش مجتمعي. الهيومن ديجنيتي او حصانه الجينوم البشري دي نقطه في غايه الاهميه. احنا ما نقدرش نتعامل مع الجينوم البشري انه حاجه سهله التغيير والتعديل بطريقه ممكن تحول الخريطه الجينيه البشريه الى شيء مستباح. ده يخالف حتى اعلان اليونسكو الخاص بحقوق الانسان، لان في الاخر الهيومن جينوم هو في النهايه هو كائن بشري هيكون في وقت من الاوقات احنا تحكمنا فيه بطريقه منفصله عن ممكن في بعض الاحيان اختياراته، زي ما احنا شفنا لو عدلنا الجيرم سيل. العدل الجيرم سيل اديتنج مش موضوع رخيص، اكيد هيبقى غالي. في كلام دلوقتي ان احنا بالجين اديتنج نقدر نخلق ما يطلق عليه السوبر هيومن او السوبر بيبي، اللي ممكن يبقى عندنا فرصه في بعض الاحيان وفي بعض النقاشات ان احنا نخلق الكائن الاكثر ذكاء، الاكثر جمالا، الاكثر حكمه، واللي ده حد يقدر يدفع في الاوف سبرينج بتاعته عشان يطلعوا كده، في حين ان المرضى اللي ما عندهمش او الاشخاص العاديين اللي ما عندهمش القدره انهم يتعاملوا مع الجين اديتنج في الوقت ده هيبقوا الاقل ذكاء، الاقل جمالا. عدم وجود العداله في بعض الاحيان دي احتمال هتخلق مشكله كبيره في التعامل مع الجينوم اديتنج. في ناس بتتكلم هل احنا وصلنا للمرحله اللي احنا ممكن نحس في نفسنا كباحثين او كمجتمع علمي ان احنا بنلعب دور ربنا؟ يعني دي حاجه في منتهى تعتبر الاعتداء على النورم بتاعنا، النورم الاجتماعي والديني. المجتمع على الجانب الاخر فعليا مهموم، لان احنا بنفكر كمجتمع في نفسنا او في الاجيال الجايه. هل نسمح بالسوماتيك سيل جين اديتنج ونأجل الجيرم سيل ولا لا؟ المخاطر اللي احنا مش متاكدين منها ازاي هنتعامل معاها؟ هل نعالج بس الامراض لكن ما نعملش تحسين؟ يعني فكره ان احنا نبحث عن شخص اكثر ذكاء او اكثر جمالا، دي حاجه مش من ضمن، المفروض تبقى ضمن السكوب بتاعنا. هل هي حلال ولا حرام؟ هل هي آمنة ولا لا؟ كل الأسئلة دي محتاجين نجاوب عليها. فعليا في تشابه شوية ما بين مشكلة الستيم سيل ومشكلة الجين اديتنج، وعلشان كده لو حبينا نفكر في الجايد لاين ممكن نقتبس من السوماتيك من الستيم سيل جايد لاين ان احنا محتاجين نفكر في المانيفاكتشر بتاع الجين اديتنج يبقى ازاي. التيومرجينيستي ستادي بناخدها بحرص، لازم نبص على اللونج تيرم سيفتي ستادي ونعمل ريجستري لكل الابحاث اللي هتتعمل في الجين اديتنج، وناخد بالنا في الببليكيشن ان احنا ننشر النتائج الايجابيه والنتائج السلبيه، مش بس النتائج الايجابيه، عشان نتعلم الدروس من بعضنا. في 2019 كان ليا الشرف ان انا احضر المؤتمر اللي تم في سنغافوره، وكان معايا دكتوره سونيا اللي هو جينوم اديتنج فور هيومن بنفيت اثكس انجيجمنت اند جفرنس. والجايد لاين بتاعته اتكلمت ان احنا محتاجين نعمل اوفر سايت ميكانيزم علشان نقدر نتحكم في الجين اديتنج الفتره الجايه، وكانت بتوصي ان المجتمع الدولي والمحلي والاقليمي والممولين الابحاث ان هم taken responsibility ان هم يعملوا جايد لاين وانفايرمنت مناسب للابحاث، في نفس الوقت انه يكون محكوم بطريقه امنه واخلاقيه بالنسبه للمبحوثين. وكان الاقتراح بتاعهم ان لجان الاخلاقيات لازم ان احنا نشركها بقوه في الفتره الجايه في الموضوع ده، لان هم هيكون ليهم العامل الرئيسي في التقييم الاخلاقي للابحاث الخاصه بالجينوم اديتنج، وان احنا محتاجين ناخد بالنا من الميديا اللي هي فيها اخبار كتيره ساعات بتلخبط المجتمع وبتديهم افكار خاطئه، سواء تخوفهم بزياده او تديهم امال كاذبه بالنسبه للجين اديتنج. عشان كده محتاجين نشرك معانا الكوميونتي بشكل اقوى، الافراد العاديين، الباحثين، رجال الدين، رجال القانون والسياسيين، عشان نوصل للريجوليشن المصري اللي احنا محتاجين نوصل. اقتراحي ان احنا لو عملنا حاجه فيها نظام حذر مش نظام منع كامل او اباحه كامله للجين اديتنج ريسيرش، ده هيتوافق مع الآراء اللي موجودة دلوقتي على مستوى العالم، وهتتيح للباحث المصري إنه يقدر يشتغل في انفايرمنت منظم. وزي ما احنا شايفين احنا لسه القانون المصري واللائحة التنفيذية طلعت، هي طبعا ما اتكلمتش على الجين اديتنج فيه، بس نقدر من خلال القانون ده نعمل نظام قوي مع ريجوليشن إضافية للجين اديتنج عشان نوصل للجايد لاين المصري. شكرا جزيلا. ان احنا محتاجين نوصل في السباق اللي هو فعليا مش عادل ما بين سرعه العلم الرهيبه وقدرتنا على ان احنا نضبط العلم بالطريقه انها تحمي المجتمع. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا يا فندم، شكرا جزيلا. And now with Professor Abir Hagras, Professor of Forensic Medicine and Clinical Toxicology, Faculty of Medicine, Suez Canal University, Ismailia, Egypt, talking about the neuroethics and biotechnology and emerging community challenge. اتفضل يا فندم.
السلام عليكم. في الأول كل سنة وحضراتكم طيبين. يعني أنا بتقدم بخالص الشكر للدكتورة سونيا على إتاحة الفرصة لي والدعوة الكريمة إن أنا أشارك في المؤتمر. له قيمة علمية كبيرة بصراحة ومضاف كتير قوي. بتقدم بخالص الشكر لأساتذتي الأفاضل اللي سبقوني في الحديث. يعني كل سنة وحضراتكم طيبين، وإن شاء الله أنا هتكلم على أنا بحاول أعمل شير، مش عارفة هي ظهرت عند حضراتكم ولا لسه.
Cognitive enhancer device, ethical consideration associated with using trans-criminal directive current stimulation for memory enhancement, regulation for using these devices, and our conclusion. Ethical concerns.
حضراتكم سامعيني؟ شكرا جزيلا. أنا ممكن أبدأ. هتكلم على النيورو إيثكس and biotechnology and emerging community. في أي حاجة؟ an emerging community challenge.
احنا مش شايفين السلايدز عند حضرتك، احنا اللي عاملين شير، حضرتك بتعمل برزنتيشن.
يعني دلوقتي هي ظاهرة الأجندة بتاعتي ولا؟
لا، ممكن نعمل شير سكرين؟
أنا عاملة شير سكرين.
لا مش ظاهرة يا دكتور.
تمام.
طيب ممكن نفتح البرزنتيشن؟
هي مفتوحة اوريدي.
طيب ممكن نرجع للزوم تاني؟
حاضر ثواني.
من غير ما نقفل البرزنتيشن.
reflects the value of the society.
ممكن
Neuroethics
كده
is a
تظهر.
recently field concerned with
تمام.
ethical, legal and social.
بتظهر دلوقتي ثانية. ممكن جو فول سكرين؟
حاضر حالا. هو النت هو بس اللي مأخر شوية.
اوكي. سلايد شو بليز بس.
تمام كده؟
تمام كده.
شكرا لحضراتكم. هنتكلم النهارده عن Neuroethics and Biotechnology and Emerging Community Challenge. الأجندة يعني هنتكلم يعني شورت نوتس كده عن ايه الموضوع بالظبط، و 3 categories of existing consumer technology. هنتكلم عن non-invasive brain stimulation devices، بعض الأجهزة اللي بتستخدم عشان تعمل cognitive enhancement. عاطية منها أمثلة زي حاجة اسمها transcranial magnetic stimulation هنتكلم عنها ولو إنه له مشاكل، وهنتكلم عن transcranial direct current stimulation. هنتكلم عن ethical consideration associated with using these devices for memory enhancement و regulation of using also these devices to our conclusion. Ethical concerns reflect the values of the society. Neuroethics is a recently field concerned with ethical, legal, and social policy implication of neuroscience. It refers to ethical issues associated with child rearing, technological advances, and associated with mind and behavior. Advances in neuroscience increasingly challenge long-held view of the individual's relationship to society. Neuroscience has led to innovation in clinical medicine that have therapeutic and non-therapeutic dimensions. These procedures dramatically change the personality of the patient and raise significant concern about efficacy and personal cost of therapy. Professional society was to advance neuroscience research. Little attention was paid to its social implication. In 1995, UNESCO International Bioethics Committee highlighted the challenges of behavioral research involving deception and manipulation, and of research involving patients, children, and a captive population who had limited capacity to make informed consent and voluntary decision about participation in the research. And argue is that the brain data collected pose significant privacy and information security risks. Brain lakes and consumer neurotechnology pay attention to worthy topic. It's important, which is called direct to the consumer neurotechnology. Direct to consumer neuro monitoring device can collect revealing personal information, prompt the researchers to suggest impractical solution to privacy and security concerns. It's important to know whether current digital infrastructure as well as ethical and legal safeguard provide sufficient protection for consumer brain data. معلش الصورة تحملها تقريبا صعب أو ما ظهرتش. 3 categories of existing consumer technology: brain-computer interface for device control or self-monitoring, devices for non-invasive neurostimulation, neuromarketing application of image technology. Drawing in the history of ethics in neuroscience, a meeting of neuroscience, which is called mapping, was titled Mapping the Field, which was held at 2002 and highlighted 4 important major areas. First, the implication of neuroscience of notion of the self, agency, and responsibility. Second, social policy applications that make new resources such as healthcare and education available to society. Third, therapeutic intervention through advances in clinical practice. And fourth, public discourse and training. Cognitive enhancement by using drugs. Is it suitable? Yes, it's suitable to make cognitive enhancement by using drugs, and these topics make our duty is difficult nowadays. It functions by modulate AMPA receptors to facilitate depolarization, so increasing level of cyclic MPP response, element binding protein. This is a pure pharmacology. This in turn activates gene to produce proteins through strengths the synapses or memories are suppressed by using beta blockers. The goal is roughly the same pharmacological control over neurocognitive function. Nowadays, there is a new topic which is called non-invasive brain stimulation devices, rapid evolution of neuromodulation technology or techniques. Cognitive enhancer device, we give example about two devices. Transcranial magnetic stimulation. This device has multiple complications and side effects. The more easier and simplest form or other device which is called transcranial direct current stimulation. This have important effect and possibility to induce cognitive enhancement. Can be widespread and due to low cost and easy production. All governments have the possibility to ensure safety, quality control standard, consumer protection, and fair marketing practice for the previous devices. Transcranial direct current stimulation is a promising technology to enhance cognitive and physical performance. One of the major areas of interest is the enhancement of memory function in healthy individuals. The arrival of these devices, which is called transcranial direct current stimulation on the market for lifestyle use and cognitive enhancement purposes, led to the voicing of some important ethical concerns. There is no official guidelines or evaluation procedures to tackle these issues. Transcranial direct current stimulation is a neurostimulation technique which can modify neural activity by delivering a weak electrical current to neural tissue through the scalp. The date of this device can improve, this device can improve memory and cognitive function in both healthy people and diverse the patient population. This device is considered as a promising alternative to conventional pharmacological treatment of many diseases, including mild cognitive impairment, depression, Alzheimer's disease, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorders. The mechanism of action of this device, transcranial direct current surfaces, is a device that can be easily built at home by the consumer and used repeatedly on different cortical location and in various stimulation modalities. During stimulation, one of the electrode used, anode electrode, has the effect of enhancing cortical excitability, where the other cathode electrode actually diminished it. The current is distributed along the electrode surface. It enters through the anode, passes through brain tissue, and exists through the cathode. Mechanism of action involve different synaptic and non-synaptic effects of neurons and non-neuronal glial cell and the tissue within the brain. Long-lasting effects appear to depend on protein synthesis. Synaptic microenvironment is also modified, which affect excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitter. It might induce additional prolonged neurochemical changes. The risks are to be poorly understood by the general publication. So this is the device which focus was to its logo is called Do It Yourself Enhancement and at Home without any medical prescription. And in response to this device, transcranial direct current stimulation. This is a neuro gaming product, which is represent a major problem in our community nowadays, and not on other products of which is called another modality of this device, which is become more safer. The main problem is for neuro gaming today. Ethical consideration associated with the development of this device for memory enhancement. Four major ethical issues should be concerned: safety, autonomy, justice, and authenticity, which is called الأصالة. الأصالة والمقصود بيها الايدنتي. هل الهوية هتفضل محفوظة ولا هيحصل فيه تطورات وتغيرات نتيجة لاستخدام هذه الأجهزة؟ في الأول بالنسبة للسيفتي, this device is non-invasive, used and easy used at home for enhancement purposes. The dangers of long-term and unexpected side effect of transcranial direct current stimulation used leading to some safety concerns. Actual benefits come into play since they are balanced with possible harms. Harm of this device include side effects which associated with potential misuse, overuse, or abuse. The probability of long-term side effects of unexpected side effects is short-term side effects. Second, autonomy. Concerns about memory enhancement involving or involve the potential challenges in individual autonomy, different of informed consent type of coercion, which include social pressure or breach. This is implicit coercion. Another type of coercion, coercion by parent for children to stimulate cognitive function, to get more learning, get more activity or physical activity also by parent. Military forces for soldiers, employee at any institute. This is called explicit coercion. There is a risk to the provision of valid consent. Breach of autonomy and informed consent imply that a clear and complete information is not provided to users. Some individuals might naively المقصود بيها ان هم بيستخدموها بسذاجة overestimated benefits and underestimated risks. لذلك الريسك بينيفيت ريشيو هنا لازم تبقى مقدرة تماما علشان نقدر نعرف هو هيستفيد قد ايه وهيخسر قد ايه، والمشاكل هتتولد في الكوميونتي هتبقى عاملة ازاي. People with psychological and neurological disorders have a difficulty in giving valid consent to use this device. 3. Justice الحقيقة هي اريا مهمة جدا في أي حاجة لها علاقة بالإثكس، زي ما تفضل الأستاذ الفاضل زميلي العزيز دكتور هاني مسبقا واتكلم عنها باستفاضة. Uses of transcranial direct current stimulation may represent a challenge in social and distributive justice. طبعا هنا حتة تكافؤ الفرص دي هتبقى منعدمة في المجتمع لو في ناس استخدمت الجهاز ده وبدأت تشتغل على نفسها وتبقى get more physically active والكوجنيشن بتاعها رائع والذكاء الاصطناعي يشتغل. هيبقى في بالذات في الكومبيتيتيف سيتنج الناس اللي بتتقدم لأي مسابقات بتتقدم لتعيينات هيبقى فيها يعني مفيش fairness خالص في الحاجة دي. Using this device may also challenge fairness, especially in competitive settings. Concerns related to distributive justice are based on the assumption of transcranial direct current stimulation will not be equally distributed among the population. Justice issues related to this device are relevant only in the case of effective technology, leading to proven benefits and real improvement of cognitive performance of memory functions. Finally, the fourth and last major important issue, which is called authenticity, الأصالة أو identity. If transcranial direct current stimulation devices actually modified memories assumption about efficacy, this could be seen as a possible threat to self-identity and the meaning of our lives. There are many questions about authenticity may concern the modification of human nature. زي ما دكتور هاني برضو قال الهيومانيتي والهيومن ناتشر الطبيعة البشرية هتختل related to identity and personality changing personality changing in nature of the human species. التيبل ده هو مجمع علشان يوضح يعمل سمرايز كل الايشو اللي اتكلمنا عليها مسبقا باستخدام هذا الجهاز اللي هي السيفتي والاوتونومي والجاستس والاوثونيستي. Using this device is often combined with training. Training in itself produces learning synaptic plasticity. Some clinical application of transcranial direct current stimulation is being explored for depression, schizophrenia, aphasia, addiction, epilepsy, chronic pain, migraine, attention, and motor rehabilitation. This device is also used for non-medical wellness applications such as accelerated learning, focus, relaxation, and mediation. Is using this device is legal? Many researches have been undertaken by experts in collected environment, and thus far, up till now, transcranial direct current stimulation is not approved in the United States by the Food and Drug Administration as a medical treatment for any indication. Regulation of the using the other device, which is called transcranial magnetic stimulation. This is a more complicated for the enhanced cognitive issue. This device, like transcranial direct current stimulation, might cause long-term serious changes in the developing brains. A reasonable precaution could be to again set the age requirement for eligibility for cognitive enhancement with transcranial magnetic stimulation at 25 years, and the service shouldn't be performed on any person below this age. Respect for autonomy. Service should be available for licensed trained professionals. Our conclusion: people should be given awareness about both the benefit and risk of a new neuromodulator technology. They also be aware that whether the benefit justify the risks, who reap the benefit and who bear the risks. If the risks and the benefits are disproportionately distributed to different groups, the practice may be unjust, which may affect the community. Despite recommendation of and calls for extending existing legislation for medical device to transcranial direct current stimulation as a product, no concrete proposal for regulation framework for all modalities of this device used by health adults have been advanced. This issue merits attention from the academic community and policy makers, particularly given the rapid evolution of neuromodulation techniques. شكرا جزيلا لحضراتكم وشكرا لحسن الاستماع.
شكرا يا فندم، شكرا جزيلا. And now with Dr. Iman Abdel Hakim Atiyah, Lecturer of Forensic Medicine and Toxicology, Member of Organizing Committee of the UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, Ain Shams University, Diploma in Biochemical Forensic Toxicology, Faculty of Medicine, Ain Shams University, talking about the ethics of workplace drug testing concerning employment regulations. تفضلي يا حبيبتي.
Thank you, Dr. Hanan. Good afternoon, honorable audience. It's my pleasure to participate in such a distinguished conference. What I'd like to discuss with you today is ethics of workplace drug testing concerning employment regulations. First, what is the term of drug testing? The term drug testing refers to the analysis of biological material to detect the presence or absence of drugs or their metabolites within human body. Workplace drug testing are classified into pre-employment tests. This is the testing conducted as a part of the screening and selection process for job applicants. Transfer testing, which is testing when employees move to a new job within a company or are promoted, and mandatory random testing, where employees are required to submit to tests either regularly or irregularly. Post-accident testing may take place as a part of the procedure for investigating and dealing with workplace accidents. Workplace is a complex issue that is full of debates and arguments. The proponents who are in favor of workplace drug testing claim the importance of such testing to promote safety. This is true when it comes to train drivers, ambulance drivers, pilot, and bus drivers. However, the opponents who are against the test argue that a drug test does not identify impairment, but merely the presence of metabolites that can indicate whether the user is an addict, a regular user, or one-off user. The second debate concerns reputational risk. Some employers are concerned about the reputation damage of their organization as a result of drug use among their workforce. However, the opponents who are against the test argue that many employees find it unfair that they have to prove their innocence when they aren't even suspected of using drugs, and that violates their right to privacy and ruin their reputation. Employee welfare is also a debatable issue. Proponents believe that drug testing can help to improve the health and welfare of the workforce by helping to identify staff who have problems and encouraging them to seek help by their employers. However, opponents stated that such a test leads to breakdown of trust. A worker who is always under eyes may no longer trust the employer and withdraw good feeling. What about organizational efficiency? Those who are in favor of the test claim that the use of drugs can be a cause of low productivity, absenteeism, and high staff turnover. It's further assumed that it reduces the cost of recruiting and training new employees. This assumption is completely rejected by opponents who believe that people might prefer not to work for employers who test for drugs. In addition, it's argued that by dismissing an employee after a positive drug test, whom a longer investment might have been made is lost to the organization. Furthermore, there are other ethical concerns regarding workplace drug testing. Concerns about accuracy. There are two general types of urine drug testing: presumptive by immunoassay and confirmatory testing by chromatography. Immunoassay is relatively weak, expensive, and sensitive. However, because it lacks specificity, it can result in various false positives and false negatives. Considering that employees could lose their job and potentially have their lives ruined by an inaccurate drug test, a confirmatory or definitive testing should be performed. Chromatography is the gold standard confirmatory technique in drug testing. Concerns about privacy. Many people argue that the act of performing a urine analysis violates the right of privacy. Other private medical information can be determined from a urine analysis, like diabetes, heart disease, depression, epilepsy, pregnancy. Concerns about fairness. The reason most people who use drugs hide the fact from other people is they are avoiding the discrimination, harassment, and bullying that typically come with being labeled as drug user or addict. The workplace is a very small community, and all it takes for word to spread that someone is a drug user or an addict. Now, what is the current Egyptian regulations on drug testing? This is the new Egyptian law regarding conditions for employment or keep employed. I'm gonna say it in Arabic, but please don't hesitate to ask for any translation of any can't understand. ده القانون رقم 73 سنة 2021 في شروط شغل الوظائف أو الاستمرار فيها. المادة رقم 3 نصت أو اشترطت أنه للتعيين أو التعاقد أو الاستعانة أو الترقية أو الندب أو النقل أو حتى الاستمرار في الوظائف العامة يجب ثبوت عدم تعاطي المخدرات من خلال تحليل فجائي بمعرفة الجهات المختصة. المادة رقم 4 قالت إن في حال ثبوت إيجابية العينة عند إجراء التحليل الفجائي أو الاستدلالي للموظفين يتم إيقاف العامل لمدة يحددها القانون وهي مش أكثر من 3 شهور أو لحين ورود نتيجة التحليل التوكيدي مع وقف صرف نصف أجر العامل طول فترة الوقف عن العمل. وإذا تأكدت إيجابية العينة من خلال نتيجة التحليل التوكيدي يتم إنهاء خدمة العامل بقوة القانون وتحدد حقوقه بعد إنهاء خدمته طبقاً للوائح والقوانين. المادة 5 نصت على أنه إذا تم تعمد الامتناع عن إجراء التحليل أثناء الخدمة أو تعمد الهرب منها بغير عذر مقبول فإن ذلك يعد سبباً موجباً لإنهاء خدمته. والمادة رقم 6 قالت من يسمح متعمداً لمن ثبت تعاطيه مخدرات بشغل إحدى الوظائف بالجهاز الإداري للدولة يعاقب بالحبس وبغرامة لا تقل عن 100,000 جنيه ولا تتجاوز 200,000 جنيه. أخيراً المادة رقم 7 نصت على أنه من يتعمد الغش في إجراء التحاليل التي ينظمها هذا القانون أو يدلي بنتيجة مخالفة للواقع يعاقب بالسجن مع عدم الإخلال بأي عقوبة أشد. Drug testing presents us with a moral dilemma. How do we respect an employer's right to a productive workplace and society's interest in a safe workplace, and at the same time to protect our fundamental right to privacy? Here are ethical aspects of drug testing by American College of Occupational and Environmental Medicine. They stated that a written company policy and procedure concerning substance abuse and screening should exist and be applied impartially. The reason for any requirement for the drug testing program should be clearly documented. It stated that care should be taken to assure that such tests are done in a uniform and impartial manner for all employees in the affected groups. They stated also that collection, transportation, and analysis of the specimens and the reporting of the results should meet legal, technical, and ethical requirements. The process should be under the supervision of a licensed physician, and this is very important. A licensed physician with appropriate qualification should be designated as medical reviewer officer and should evaluate positive results prior to a report being made to the employer. Medical reviewer officer training should include the pharmacology of substance, laboratory testing methodology, quality control, and forensic toxicology. Medical reviewer officer should discuss with the patients prior to initiation of therapy that urine drug monitoring is conducted for their safety and for public safety, and he should obtain a comprehensive and full medication history, including herbal and over-the-counter supplements and medications due to potential cross-reactivity and false positives. He should ask patients how they are taking their medications and time of their last dose. These are mandatory guidelines for federal workplace drug testing stated by Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. Regarding the specimen collected, the commonest form of testing is urine. In addition, oral fluid, hair, sweat can be tested, but the commonest is the urine. The collector is the person who instructs and assists donors at collection site and receives the specimen provided by the donor. So the collector should be trained to collect urine specimens. The collector has a responsibility for maintaining the integrity of the collection process, ensuring the privacy of the donor, ensuring the security of the specimen, avoiding conduct or statements that could be viewed as offensive or inappropriate, and to avoid potential conflict of interest, a collector must not be related to the employee. What about collection sites? The facility used as a collection site must have the following. It has to provide or ensure a donor privacy during collection, to provide a secure temporary storage area to maintain specimen until it is transferred to a certified laboratory. It should have a restricted access area where only authorized personnel may be present during the collection, and it has to provide it has to restrict the donor access to potential delusions. Containers and bottles, this is very important, must be single-use container that must not affect the composition of drugs or metabolites in their specimen, and the specimen collection container will be opened in view of the donor. The container should be sufficiently transparent to enable an objective assessment of the specimen appearance and identification of abnormal physical characteristics without opening the bottle. Regarding the collection procedure, we have to respect the donor. When the donor arrives at the collection site, the collector should begin the collection procedure without undue delay. For example, he said that the collection should not be delayed because employer representative is late. The collector requests the donor to present photo identification, and in turn, the collector must provide identification if requested by the donor. The collector explains the basic collection procedure to the donor, and neither the collector nor anyone else may go into the room with the donor. Sometimes the donor exhibits conduct that clearly indicates an attempt to tamper or adulterate the specimen. Here, an observed collection is performed. The gender of the observer must be the same as donor's gender. The collector may set a reasonable time limit for specimen collection because some people may have a condition called paraiuresis, which is a social anxiety disorder which prevents a person from producing urine on demand or in the presence of other people. And here, in this situation, an alternative specimen may be used. However, it raises the question if it has a shorter detection window, so it causes unfairness among employment. After providing the specimen, both the donor and the collector must keep the specimen container in view at all times until the collector seals the specimen, and the collector must never combine urine collected from separate voids to create a specimen. All what have been said formulate the chain of custody, which is a serious process of collecting, documenting, and protecting evidence. It's critical that the chain of custody is followed and maintained because a non-negative results during workplace drug screening can have life-changing consequences for the individual. Moreover, proper documentation is crucial to prevent mishaps, tampering, or lost samples on their way to the laboratory for confirmation of a result. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you so much, Dr. Iman Abdel Hakim. ربنا يبارك فيكي. Now with دعاء وائل الجندي, House Officer, Faculty of Medicine, Ain Shams University, The Future of Healthcare in the Digital Age, Biotechnology Innovations for Efficient Healthcare Delivery. تفضلي يا دعاء.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.
السلام عليكم. أنا دعاء وائل الجندي. أنا House Officer من الدمرداش Hospital. Thank you so much, Dr. Sonia, for the opportunity to attend such a prestigious conference. All the talks have been very beneficial, and I enjoyed a lot. And now my talk is about biotechnology innovations, which help the healthcare delivery system, and we will see how. So, can everybody hear me?
Yes, dear, yes.
So, as bioengineering and technology are advancing, we are blessed with cutting-edge nanotechnology and biotechnology, which together create bio-nanotechnology that gives us integrated solutions which take system diagnosis to the next level.
هو بس في صوت هوا والبرزنتيشن محتاجة تتعمل أكبر من كده، يعني أعرض من كده. It looks very small. Can you يعني change the view نفس Yes, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. So to illustrate the advances in the biomedical devices, here's the original pacemaker, which was invented by John Hopkins in 1958, compared to the modern and more compact versions seen on the right. The examples of biomedical advances are numerous. For example, 3D organ printing, gene editing, and several of the technologies that has been discussed in the talks today. These all are inventions that revolutionized the patient care. In this fascinating field of endless possibilities, I will limit my talk to two diagnostic technologies that are worth noticing and potentially worth introducing to our Egyptian healthcare system. So the first is ingestible electronic pills. These are pills that are used for both diagnostic and therapy. Ingestible electronic pills have allowed for a wide range of non-invasive GIT diagnostic and therapeutic interventions. They are biocompatible pills that can be safely ingested by patients while connected to a wireless transmission device to send feedback imaging and biosensory data to the receiver, which the doctor has access to. The market segmentation of these pills are divided into types, which is based on the clinical application and on the target area. They can be divided based on the target areas such as how far they can go, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, etc., or by clinical application that includes delivering drugs or live monitoring of drugs, monitoring the compliance of medication, dosages, endoscopy screening, screening for cancer, for bleeding, which we'll be talking about in details soon, as well as obtaining biopsy, biological data, such as gastric pH, temperature, and data on the intestinal bacterial flora. So here, the size, you can see the size of the capsule. It's similar to a standard pill, and it's swallowed by the patient, and it travels through the digestive system based on its type. As you can see the dissection or the anatomy of the pill, it contains high-resolution camera and microcontrollers, batteries, antennas, and light-emitting diodes. The different types of pills contain different features to support the function. For example, some pills have the capability to collect a tissue biopsy via a fine needle aspiration, while other pills have a balloon that can be inflated to control GIT bleeding via the balloon tamponade technique. The capsules have enough power to transmit videos of the GIT tract for up to 12 hours, and this number is increasing as the technology develops. And then the video stream can then be analyzed by gastroenterologists to reach a more accurate diagnosis in a very non-invasive technique. Although this might feel like it's a new technology, these pills have actually been around since the 80s, and they were tested on pigs in 1997. Historically, the basic concept of endoscopy and its relevance in the medical diagnostic have been around since the 1852, which almost 2 centuries ago, using rigid wire endoscopy. But this was limited to the upper GIT. Then later, during the 2000s, efforts were made to improve the image frame rate, fiber optic quality, to obtain longer battery life, better visualization, and other technical specifications. This also includes to control the navigation of the capsule or use 2D X-ray features, as we can see in 2016 up to 2020, where artificial intelligence was included. So there are several clinical applications to this capsule-sized beauty. In addition to being a non-invasive endoscopic video capsule, It can help us retrieve physical samples from specific locations in the GIT, and this can help us understand the composition and diversity of the microorganisms. The currently used stool test may not be reflective of the true intestinal health because the fecal samples have shown to display greater bacterial richness and variation based on multiple factors and personal defecation habits. And the use of traditional endoscopy to retrieve samples from the location that we want is invasive, inconvenient, and might not be capable of reaching the distal regions of the small intestine. As an alternative, the gut sample can be collected using this capsule in a technology that uses magnetic fields to open the pill, grab a sample, close it, and then come out again. Similarly, the pills also have the ability to do tissue evaluation. A new breed of these ingestible electronics have developed an ability in 2016 to create X-rays of the GIT tract. And these devices work by emitting and detecting 2D X-ray beams as they move through the GIT. And they can tell us more about esophageal diseases or measure the severity of symptoms in inflammatory bowel disease, such as Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. They also collect biomarkers, such as temperature, pH, and pressure sensors. These have been useful in diagnosis of gastroparesis by measuring the gastric emptying, and athletes and firefighters have also been using this to measure their core temperature for many years. They can also measure other biomarkers like small protein molecules, electrolytes, gases, which help in their respective diagnosis and help in tailoring the management plan under the name of personalized medicine. And they can be specific and sensitive to specific elements based on the programming of the pill. Since the GIT is very close to other major organs, the pills have also the capability to use ultrasound, which can view other nearby organs, such as the prostate, which can be helpful in expanding our diagnostic potential and exploration of other organs and diseases without being very invasive. Another great feature of this is the drug delivery in patients with intestinal diseases. This technology is used to ensure that the drug is released once it has reached the desired location, and also it helps with bioavailability and kinetic issues. And another thing is the digital compliance management. So these pills could be ingested to monitor the dose and the medicines in the GIT. And the pills or the medicine the oral medicine that's given is marked with an radio frequency identification chip that's attached to the oral drug. And this helps the medical professionals understand if the patient is compliant, if there's dose adjustment, if there's specific habits that affect compliance, especially with Alzheimer's patients, dementia, and this is a good alternative to traditional direct drug compliance surveillance method. How this works is that the gastric acid, and once the medication and the sensors, the pill and the sensors are ingested, they reach the stomach, and the gastric acid in the stomach is used by the sensor to generate a tiny electrical current, which is then transmitted to a patch. We'll be seeing it here. It's used to be transmitted to a patch, and the data that's recorded is sent to an application, which can be on a smartphone or a smartwatch. And the records are also shared with the doctor, who can know information about the drug, the date, the time, the type, the amount taken, to know if is the patient not getting well because he's not taking the medication, or is he taking inadequate dosage, etc. As well as the sensors can take other data such as sleep quality, step count, whatever is on the programming. The sensor can take several data which help in making proper patient decisions. The final thing is the balloon tamponading. That study has shown that the use of ingestible capsules can treat GIT hemorrhage through a balloon tamponade. It's equipped with a silicone balloon that can be inflated by a gas reaction that's created when we mix acid and base, and we get a carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide gets inside the balloon, and which inflates the balloon against the GIT to stop the hemorrhage. So regarding the safety and water, of course, everything, despite its advantages, has risks and limitations. So the safety and FDA approval in 2003, the Smart Pill became the first FDA-approved wireless capsule technology that integrated sensors for measuring pH, core body temperature, and pressure. And the FDA has listed 6 risks to the health from this gastrointestinal pills. The first is biocompatibility, means it should be compatible with the environment inside the body, inside the intestines. It should have electrical and mechanical safety. There should be assessment for the risk of intestinal obstruction or injury, and it should demonstrate functional reliability, and it should be well equipped with technology to avoid misinterpretation of recorded images, and there should be radio frequency, radiated power, and electromagnetic compatibility with proper warning, such the patient who ingested the pills should avoid going near high source of radio machines such as MRI, etc. There are, of course, risks of pill retention, aspiration, obstruction, mucosal injury, internal bleeding, and these warnings are issued by the doctor to the patients who have these pills. The video capsule is actually a very promising tool. It could effectively complement the existing procedures in surgery and radiology, as it establishes a safe and high-quality outpatient procedure, and it reduces medical complication and more invasive intervention, and possibly it offers quicker diagnostics abroad. Of course, it's lower cost. In our country, currency difference, it might not offer lower cost, but who knows, maybe in the future. With the GIT, the aim to use electronic chips which are completely biodegradable, because currently the remaining parts of the chip they come out with the faces, but the goal is to completely
دعاء دكتورة دعاء
ايوه حبيبتي،
الصوت بعيد قوي.
الصوت بعيد وبقى بيقطع، يعني انا مش عارف.
كده احسن؟
لا ستيل بعيد. هو كان بيرفكت، بس يعني في اخر دقيقتين كده او دقيقه.
طيب change النتورك دي واحده. أحسن شوية.
تمام كده أحسن، اتفضلي.
So that's it. And there is also potential for introducing
معلش هو الصوت ضعيف تاني لو سمحتي. معذرة للمجموعة الموجودة الحضور. دكتورة دعاء بتكلمنا وهي في الشغل، فكل شغلها على الموبايل، فمعلش لو في أي مشكلة. احنا كلنا عندنا مشاكل كده. كويس، اتفضلي يا دكتورة دعاء.
تمام. طيب next technology، آخر حاجة عندنا سريع هي this is finally the first FDA approved blood test for traumatic brain injury. So typically, whenever we had suspect of fall or specific criteria, so increase the need for unnecessary CT scan. There's now a blood test, a plasma test that can detect traumatic brain injury, because many of the concussions due to traumatic brain injuries can go a missed concussion in 30% of cases result in mortality or disability. So this FDA handheld device. You can see it right here. It's the iStat plasma test. It's a regular blood test that's inserted via a chip on this device, and can detect certain proteins, namely the UCHL1 and GFAP protein that's found in the blood after a concussion or a head trauma. And as we know, these results are given within 15 minutes, which is very rapid and can decrease ER waiting time. And as we know, for any rapid test, for any diagnostic test, we care a lot about specificity and sensitivity. So a multi-center study was performed and found that this test provided a sensitivity of 97.6%, with the lower limit of the 95% confidence interval down to 93.1%. There was 671 patients showing a negative BTI test, and the negative predictive value was, according to the study, 99.6, which is great. So, and the lower confidence interval bound was at 98.7%. So the application, they concluded that these results support the role of the biomarker test for ruling out the need for head CT among patients with traumatic brain injury presenting the emergency department. Traditionally, a head CT would be clinically indicated. So this would be great in saving time, saving cost, and serving patients, but probably pending more accuracy testing. So this is very interesting. So thank you so much for listening. I am very fascinated with this field. It's a world of endless possibilities. I was honored to share with you two of these technologies. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dua. You are a promising young doctor. I wish you all the best in your future, dear.
Thank you so much.
I'm now with the Assistant Professor Minatullah Mehriz, Associate Professor of Research, Uro-Dental Genetics, Department, National Research Center, Cairo, Egypt. A glimpse at psychosocial counseling in Egypt, a pilot study. تفضل يا فندم.
حاضر.
منوران.
ميرسي جدا. كده تمام؟
كده تمام. Perfect.
أنا أحب الأول أعتذر عن أي background noises ممكن تحصل. هي part of the morning life in Giza. تاني حاجة أحب أقول قد إيه أنا honored إن أنا أكون among يعني elite professorship. أحب أشكر دكتور سهام ودكتور نيال حسيب يعني إن هم قالوا لنا على الويبينار دي. يعني أنا فعلا فخورة جدا إن أنا موجودة. وأحب أشكر دكتور سونيا على a very well organized day. Thank you very much. أنا شغلي كان بعنوان A Glimpse at Psychosocial Counseling in Egypt. ودون كان من خلال منحة أخدتها من ال Higher Education Initiative، وكان اسم البروجرام Graduate Scholarships for Professionals. دون كان في 2019. أحب أبتدي بbrief introduction. الجينيتك كونسلنج ليه two techniques أو two models. دون اللي موجود currently، لكن طبعا في حاجات historical. في teaching model وفي psychosocial model. As for the teaching model, this is concerned with the patient's education mainly. It has all the components of genetic counseling interactions اللي هي بتبقى طبعا information gathering about the patient and the disorder, establishing a diagnosis and verifying it, risk assessment لل patient and their family, and information giving. And here where the teaching model would end. نيجي بقى لل psychosocial counseling and support. دون بيبقى a work of alliance between the counselor and the counselee. but it's not something that happens at the tail of the session as the slide would suggest. It's rather a frame of the session. دون بيبقى الالينس دون بيبقى maintained mainly by the counselor بان هو بيبقى عنده self awareness، بيبقى ان هو عنده طبعا protecting the confidentiality of the patient، وكمان الاوتونومي of course، و حاجه مهمه جدا وهي protecting الباوندريز بتاعت البيشنت. حبيت برضو اقول عن الجينيتك counseling in Egypt. The first human genetics clinic in Egypt was founded in the 70s of the last century by Professor Dr. Samia Temtemi. For over 40 years, the National Research Center clinics have been counseling families with genetic disorders, helping them identify their disorders and educating them and aiding them with their decisions. Yet till date, genetic counseling is not a profession on its own, as it is in several Western countries. بنعمل counseling based on courses يا إما أخدناها في جامعة عين شمس يا إما أخدناها في جامعة اسكندرية، يا إما معظمنا بتبقى بطريقة apprenticeship under strict supervision from our elders في ethos and philosophy of genetic counseling. This led me to think إن ممكن يكون a lack of training programs و accreditation of genetic counseling in Egypt might result in adhering to the teaching model rather than the psychosocial أو counseling model. So the aim of my study was to identify the extensive usage of the psychosocial model in genetic counseling in Egypt. بالنسبة للmethods, I used a questionnaire. الquestionnaire دون أنا ركزت فيه على 4 categories. The 4 categories were taken from the American Board of Genetic Counselors core competencies. الأربع حاجات كانت how to build rapport, listening skills, interviewing skills, if the sessions were patient-centered or not. The questionnaire had every type of question under the sky. فكان عندي quantitative، كان عندي binary and scale questions، كان عندي qualitative where I left space for the clinician to state their opinion or use their wordings in order to explain something. في الآخر حبيت إن يكون في قعدت مع الستاتستيشن بتاعتنا دكتور فيبي مجدي وقلت لها إن أنا نفسي يكون عندي a composite index that would make it easier to judge each category. The questionnaire reliability was tested by Cronbach's alpha test والvalue طلعت 0.61 which was considered sufficient. As for the subjects, طبعا I targeted 3 departments اللي بتقدر إنها تديل with patients زي clinical department, orodontal genetics department اللي هي my department والprenatal. Volunteers were sent a link to the questionnaire to answer anonymously and voluntarily. The link was sent through email and social media interfaces. كان عندي 60% response rate. 2 forms were empty and were discarded نتيجة technical problems. بالنسبة للباينري and scale questions كانت كل الإجابات بتعمل rejecting للnull hypothesis except one question كان في discrepancy in the non-directiveness. ولما ابتديت أقرأ في الليترشر لقيت إن actually this was sort of a blessing. يعني بالنسبة لي كانت مفاجأة إن ال discrepancy دي موجودة. بالنسبة للqualitative questions كلها برضو rejected in null hypothesis except when they were asked about psychological theories. Composite indices indicated that the clinicians had the ability to build rapport, listen, and create patient-centered atmosphere, but the interviewing skill were low. In Egypt, for the past 40 years, there has been little information on how genetic counseling is done and what sort of method is usually adopted. الليترشر في information on الاوتكم بتاعه السيشنز، لكن مش موجود فيه ازاي السيشنز بتبقى conducted. To our knowledge, this is the first study to shed some light on how the sessions are conducted. بالنسبة للريزلتس كان عندنا اللي هو الكويستشن بتاع النون دايركتفنس، ودون كان فيه discrepancy. النون دايركتفنس هي إن المفروض إنها defined as a neutral stand. أنا بقول للبيشنت التشويسز بتاعته وهو حر يختار إيه. الحقيقة إن على أرض الواقع دون مش بيحصل. اللي بيحصل إن أنا بقول للبيشنت التشويسز بتاعتك أهي، وأحسن لك نعمل كذا كذا، وهو حر يختار الأحسن أو لا. وهو دون الحقيقة اللي أنا اكتشفت إن إحنا معظمنا يعني بيمشي عليه، ولقيت إن في الليترشر فعلا الناس بتتبنى الطريقة دي. ومنها جاء إن الناس عايزة تلغي كلمة non-directiveness ويخلوا بس كلمة patient's autonomy هي اللي موجودة. بالنسبة للديسكريبنسي التانية كانت في عدم معرفة بالسايكولوجيكال ثيوريز. فايدة السايكولوجيكال ثيوريز إنها بتخليني أبقى فاهمة البيشنت state of mind و how he is supposed to cope. لكن ديت theoretical part، يعني بيجي مع المذاكرة، مش بتبقى حاجة نتيجة applied work. فكان طبيعي إن يبقى فيها discrepancy. الحاجة التانية اللي برضو كان فيها discrepancy هي ال interviewing skills، ودي بتيجي مع training. ال lack of training ممكن يسبب إن ال interviewing skills تكون قليلة. Lastly, the study shows that basic psychosocial skills are present even without training. That doesn't in any way decrease the importance of training and aspiring to better the service given to patients or counselees through training in the ways of interviewing and knowledge of the psychological theories that might explain the patient's reactions and coping mechanisms. This work was done under the supervision of Professor Harsfield and Associate Professor Morford in the University of Kentucky. And statistics was done by my colleague, Dr. Phoebe Magdi. She works in the Oriental Genetics Department as well. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Dr. Minna. And now, saving the best for the last, with Professor Azza Saleh Radwan, Professor of Clinical and Chemical Pathology, Theodore Bilharz Research Institute, Diploma of Total Quality Management in Healthcare AUC, Certified International Trainer in Research Ethics USA, Certified International Professional Trainer, Missouri State University USA, Creator and Coordinator of Egyptian Network of Research Ethics Committee, Honorary President since 2019. Her talk is about Research Ethics Committee. أهلا وسهلا يا فندم.
أهلا بيك يا دكتورة، وأنا الحقيقة سعيدة جدا إني مشتركة معاكم في هذا اليوم الجميل، وبشكر الدكتورة سونيا الحقيقة على إن أنا أبقى موجودة معاها في الوركشوبس أو الندوات الجميلة اللي هي بتعملها. التوك بتاعتي هتبقى عن أولا السلايد واضح؟ الشير بتاع
لا لسه يا دكتورة عزة، أنا مش شايفة السلايد بتاعت حضرتك.
هو حضرتك المين سكرين هي الكونفرنس باك جراوند؟
بالظبط بس
كده
تمام.
أيوه تمام
صح.
تمام.
مش عارفة تمام. طيب أنا يعني متشكرة على التقديمة الجميلة، وأنا بس بحب أضيف على الحاجات اللي أنا بحبها أو الحاجات اللي بهتم بيها هي البازل. إن شاء الله في نهاية البرزنتيشن هنعرف الحل بتاع البازل بإذن الله. التوب بتاعتي هتبقى هقول إحنا ليه محتاجين لجان الأخلاقيات، هعمل ستريس على ليه إحنا محتاجينها، هتكلم على الستراكشر والرول بتاعتها وإزاي إحنا نتعامل معاها. علشان الشغل بتاعنا يبقى ethical، الكلينيكال ورك بتاعنا يبقى ethical، لازم يكون في الثمان ايتمز دول. فمنهم الايتم بتاع الاندبندنت ريفيو، ان الشغل يتراجع بلجنه مستقله. وبالتالي هنقول ليه احنا محتاجينها، هنقول ايه هي اللجنه، مين هم، امتى بنحتاج لها تاني او امتى بنروح لها، وهي بتشتغل ازاي، وهوبينج التيك هوم مسج توصل لحضرتك. ليه احنا محتاجينها؟ الاول بس حابه اقول انه ساعات بتتسمى REC وساعات بتتسمى IRB. ايه الديفرنس بينهم؟ هو ما فيش اي ديفرنس، هما الاثنين نفس المعنى، Research Ethics Committee او Institutional Review Board. الاختلاف انه في اوروبا بيميلوا الى ان هم يسموها REC، في اوروبا في امريكا بيسموها IRB. احنا في مصر بعض الاماكن بتسميها كده او كده، مش مهم، المهم ان احنا نبقى فاهمين ان هم سواء كان اسمها REC او IRB هم الاثنين معناهم بالعربي لجنه اخلاقيات البحث العلمي. ليه احنا محتاجينها؟ الحقيقه لائحه اداب المهنه عندنا من 2003 بتقول، عندها الماده 57 بتقول انه علشان نجري تجارب على البني ادمين احنا لازم نعمل تقرير مفصل وواضح عن اهداف البحث ومبررات اجراءه وهكذا، وناخد موافقه الجهه المختصه قبل ما نبتدي اجراء البحث. الجديد بقى والمهم جدا جدا ويمكن المين بارت بتاع البرزنتيشن بتاعتي، ان احنا دلوقتي بقى عندنا قانون رقم 214 ظهر في 2020 علشان ينظم البحوث الطبيه الاكلينيكيه، ويوم 12 مارس طلعت اللائحه التنفيذيه بتاعته. يعني القانون بقى ساري يا جماعه، ولازم نمشي على الحاجات اللي هو قايلها علشان ما نكونش عرضه لعقوبات ومسؤوليات موجوده برضو في القانون. في القانون كان كاتب في التعريفات الاولانيه بتاعته، هو فيه 25 تعريف، التعريف ال 24 كان بيتكلم على اللجنه المؤسسيه اللي هتراجع اخلاقيات البحوث الطبيه او شورتلي اللجنه المؤسسيه. كان في ماده بحالها برضو، ماده 8 كانت مكتوب فيها زي ما حضراتكم شايفين، ده سناب شوت من القانون، ان تشكل داخل كل جهه بحثيه بقرار من السلطه المختصه لجنه تسمى اللجنه المؤسسيه. بتعمل ايه؟ بتعمل رعايه لحقوق المبحوثين وامانهم وصحتهم، تراجع المخططات البحثيه اللي بتتقدم ليها وتتاكد انه كل الاوراق والموافقات والمستندات موجوده حسب الحاله او حسب كل حاله، سو لونج ان انا بتعامل مع الانسان. بتطلع قرار بالموافقه علشان البحث يبتدي، وبتقعد تتابعه خلال لحد ما ينتهي او لحد ما لا قدر الله يتم انهائه لاي سبب. من ضمن مهام اللجنه انها تعمل مراقبه على الباحث الرئيس وعلى راعي الدراسه. المهم كل الكلام ده كان موجود في القانون، وكان مكتوب على النحو الذي تبينه اللائحه التنفيذيه. جت اللائحه التنفيذيه قالت نفس الكلام، لكن حددت شويه اللجنه تتكون ازاي، ان هي اتليست تتكون من 5 افراد، ما ينفعش تبقى اقل من 5، الرئيس و4 اعضاء، تبقى المده 3 سنين، ممكن نجددها مره، لكن لازم يتم تغيير على الاقل عضوين كل 3 سنين، حتى لو ما بنغيرهاش كلها، ولازم يكون ليها مقرر، يعني ليها رئيس وليها مقرر. ودخلت في تفاصيل اللي انا هقولها لان دي جنرال، الحقيقه اللائحه التنفيذيه وضحتها، قالت انه اتليست واحد من الاعضاء يكون من غير المجال الطبي، يعني ال5 مجالات الطبيه بتاعتنا، طب بشري، طب اسنان، صيدله، علاج طبيعي او تمريض، لازم يكون ده واحد خارج هذه المجموعه، وكمان يكون واحد على الاقل لا ينتمي للجهه اللي بتجرى فيها البحث. يعني لما اعمل البحث في معهد تيودور بالهارس للابحاث لازم على الاقل واحد من الاعضاء يكون من خارج العاملين في المعهد. المفروض ان الجهه البحثيه بتقدم ده بالقانون الجديد، انا هقول لكم اللي موجود حاليا لحد ما المجلس الاعلى يتشكل، لكن نبقى عارفين ان لازم اللجنه لما تشكل تتسجل في المجلس الاعلى. اتكلموا كمان على التخصصات اللي هي كانت موجوده في القانون، اتكلموا عنها باستفاضه اكتر، وقالوا ان هو لازم يبلغ المجلس الاعلى بكل البروتوكولات اللي وافق عليها والوثائق والبيانات وكل الحاجات المتعلقه، وده الغرض منه ان احنا يبقى عندنا داتابيز للابحاث اللي بتجرى في مصر وتكون متسجله في هذا المجلس اللي ان شاء الله قريب هيشكل نظرا الى ان اللائحه التنفيذيه صدرت خلاص. نرجع بقى للانترناشونال، ايه اللي حاصل؟ الديكلاريشن اوف هلسنكي كانت بتقول ان احنا لازم نسبمت البروتوكول بتاعنا للجنه الاخلاقيات قبل ما نبتدي نعمل الدراسه. برضو كل ده تحت بند واي. الحقيقه هي كلها حاجات اللي مكتوبه ان احنا بنحسن حمايه المشتركين، بنحسن الريبيتيشن بتاعت المكان، بقى بيطلب كتير، لكن الحقيقه حضراتكم علشان تعملوا بحث وتاخدوا فند من ناشونال او انترناشونال سبونسر لازم حضراتكم تكونوا واخدين موافقه لجنه اخلاقيات. وزي ما حضراتكم شايفين الاس تي دي اف في الابلكيشن بتاعته كان بيطلب الكلام ده، بيطلب موافقه لجنه الاخلاقيات، بيطلب ازاي السبجكت هيبقى الكونفيدنشاليتي بتاعته متحافظ عليها، لازم يكون موجود تشكيل اللجنه، يعني حطوا مواصفات تشكيل اللجنه اللي هي دلوقتي بقت موجوده في القانون وبقت موجوده في موجوده في الانترناشونال جايد لاينز، ان لازم يكون يعرفوا العدد بتاعهم، يعرفوا الاستراكشر، يعرفوا شغاله بقالها قد ايه. وده لان زي ما هقول بتفصيل اكتر، الاستراكشر بتاعه لجنه الاخلاقيات مختلفه عن الاستراكشر بتاع اي لجنه احنا متعودين عليها. الان اي اتش برضه بيطلب موافقه لجنه الاخلاقيات قبل اجراء البحث. اوروبا نفس الكلام، لو رحنا الاي يو هنلاقيهم برضه بيطلبوا موافقه لجنه اخلاقيات على البحث اللي هم هيمولوه. الحاجه الثانيه انه علشان حضراتكم تعملوا انترناشونال بابليكيشن لازم يكون في موافقه على اجراء البحث قبل ما تيجي تنشر، فبالتالي الموافقه على الاجراء لازم تكون موجوده علشان لما توصل النهايه ان انت هتنشر لازم يكون معاك موافقه اللجنه على الاجراء. وزي ما حضراتكم شايفين ده سناب شوت من السايت بتاع الوام اللي هو الورد اسوسيشن اوف ميديكال اديتورز، وكانوا قايلين كمان انه زي ما حضراتكم شايفين لازم يكون في دوكيومنتد ريفيو وابروفل من لجنه قبل بدايه اجراء البحث. لو انا هشتغل على البني ادمين، هشتغل على الميديكال ريكوردز، او حتى هشتغل على هيومن تيشوز معرفه، يبقى لازم اخد الموافقه. ايه هي اللجنه ومين هم؟ زي ما القانون قال هي لجنه مالتي ديسيبلينري، لجنه لازم يكون اعضائها من تخصصات مختلفه، لازم تكون اللجنه بتبقى اندبندنت، يعني ما حدش يقدر يملي عليها قرارات. اللجنه لازم يكون فيها جونيورز وسينيورز، لازم يكون فيها رجاله وستات. اللجنه كمان لازم يكون فيها ممثل زي ما قلنا من غير التخصصات الطبيه، و بتبقى authorized، وزي ما قلنا انه او القانون قال انه الريزونبل نمبر بتاعها انها تكون اتليست 5. لازم يكون عندها تايم سكيدول معين، لازم يكون عندها تشير بيرسون. اللجنه لازم يكون فيها واحد زي ما قلنا اتليست 1 نون ميديكال واتليست 1 نون افيليتد. زي ما حضراتكم شايفين الجايد لاينز بتقول الكلام ده، ولما القانون اتعمل ولائحته التنفيذيه كنا ستيكينج للجايد لاينز، لان احنا مش هنخترع الذره ولازم نبقى موجودين بنفس الموجود في الانترناشونال علشان ابحاثنا تبقى معترف بيها دوليا لانه متوافق عليها من لجان متشكله مظبوط. اللجنه بتراجع الابحاث اللي متصله زي ما قلنا بالهيومن سبجكت علشان تتاكد ان مفيش اي فايوليشن للرايتس او الويلفير بتاع البارتيسيبنت. وكمان هي بتحمي الريسيرشرز وبتحمي الانستتيوشنز، لان دلوقتي في عقوبات زي ما قلت في القانون. الفصل 12 من القانون بيتكلم على المسؤوليه والعقوبات، فلازم نحافظ على ان احنا ما نبقاش عرضه واحنا بنعمل ابحاث ان احنا نقع تحت طائله القانون. اللجنه بتعمل ايه؟ اللجنه ممكن توافق على البحث as it is، او تطلب بعض الايضاحات، او تطلب بعض التعديلات اللي تمس مصلحه المشتركين، او تأجل لو الموضوع محتاج تحسين كتير فممكن تأجل لإعادة النظر على للجنة تاني بعد ما يحصل التعديلات اللي اللجنة طلبت. اللجنة كمان من ضمن أعمالها زي ما القانون قال إنها تتابع البحث. ما المفروض أي بحث بتوافق عليه لجنة الأخلاقيات على إجراءه ما يكونش الموافقة دي فاليد لأكتر من سنة. بعد سنة لازم الباحث يقدم تاني علشان يعمل رينيوال، لأن الابروفل بيبقى expired، وحتى لو كانت الدراسة أكبر من سنة، وده أغلب الدراسات أو أغلب المشاريع، برضو هو كل سنة لازم يجدد، لأنه مش هياخد من الأول موافقة على كل مدة البحث. لو أي باحث عمل أي تعديل في البروتوكول اللي كان واخد عليه موافقة، لازم يرجع للجنة الأخلاقيات يوريها التعديلات ويقول إيه أسباب هذه التعديلات. لازم يبلغ اللجنة بأني adverse event أو serious adverse event حصلت. دي من ضمن مهام اللجنة، لأن هي زي ما اتفقنا بتراعي حقوق المبحوثين وبتراعي مصلحتهم وبتراعي أمانهم. فلو حصل أي حدث غير مرغوب فيه، سواء كان adverse event عادي أو serious adverse event، لازم يتبلغ للجنة. اللجنة من حقها، وموجود برضو في القانون، ان اللجنه تعلق موافقتها او تترمينيت الابروفل، وبالتالي تترمينيت البحث لو حصل اي مشاكل كبيره من البحث. ومن ضمن مهام اللجنه برضو ان هي تعمل الاديوكيشنال اكسرسايزز او تعمل ورش عمل علشان ترفع من المعلومات او تزود المعلومات اللي موجوده عند الباحثين بشان حمايه المبحوثين. أعضاء اللجنة لازم يمضوا ورقتين في بداية في بداية اجتماعات اللجنة. في أول اجتماع للجنة كل الأعضاء بيتعهدوا بحاجتين، بيتعهدوا إنهم يعلنوا عن تضارب المصالح لما يكون موجود، وكمان يعني يصروا أو يتعهدوا بإن هم هيحافظوا على الكونفيدنشاليتي، وبالتالي بيمضوا confidentiality agreement. اللجنة بنروح لها امتى؟ لما يتوفر عندنا في البحث سؤالين. السؤال الاولاني هو البحث هو اللي انا بعمله ده اساسا يدخل تحت بند بحث، يعني هو سيستماتيك شغل هعمله، شغل منهجي، وانا في الاخر هعمل generalizable knowledge يعني هنشره. ولو الاجابه على السؤال ده ايوه، بسال نفسي السؤال الثاني، هل انا بشتغل على human subject؟ وتعريف الهيومن سبجكت مهم جدا ان انا اعرفه انه البني ادم اللي انا باخد منه معلومات عن طريق حاجه من ثلاثه: يا بعمل له انترفنشن، يا بعمل معاه انتر اكشن، يا باخد عنه معلومات معرفه. يعني لو باخد بواقي الدم اللي موجوده في الانبوبه، الليفت اوفر سامبلز اللي هم اصلا هيتم التخلص منهم، لكن الانبوبه دي عليها اسم المشترك، يعني انا ممكن استدل عليه، يبقى هنا انا بتعامل مع هيومن سبجكت ايفن لو انا حتى ما قابلتش هذا الشخص. النقطه دي مهمه جدا، لان تعريف الهيومن سبجكت الحقيقه هو موجود في القانون برضو. كل الحاجات دي موجوده في القانون يا جماعه، ولازم نقرا القانون علشان ولائحته التنفيذيه طبعا علشان نبقى عارفين احنا فين بالظبط. لو جيت اقول وين الثانيه ان انا لازم اخد الموافقه قبل ما ابتدي اعمل اي حاجه. يعني بعد ما بخلص كتابه الاوراق بتاعتي وكتابه البروتوكول وكتابه الموافقه المستنيره وكتابه كل الدوكيومنتس بتاعتي، بروح للجنه قبل ما ابتدي انزل على ارض الواقع واخد ابتدي اريكروت العيانين او ان انا الم الداتا. المفروض ان انا بقدم للجنه قبلها باسبوعين، عشان كده قلنا انه اللجنه لازم يكون ليها تايم سكيدول علشان الناس تبقى عارفه تروح لها امتى. يعني تقريبا بيبقى الابروفل بياخد شهر. نورمالي نو بوست كوندكشن ابروفل، ما ينفعش حضرتك تبتدي الدراسه وبعدين تروحي تدوري على انك تاخدي او تاخد موافقه لجنه الاخلاقيات. الموضوع هيبقى انتهى. اللجنه بتشتغل ازاي؟ كل اللجان بيبقى عندها SOPs الستاندرد اوبريتنج بروسيدجرز بتاعتها اللي هي بتوري ازاي احنا نتعامل معاها. وبعدين كمان اللجان بتطبق ال8 ethical requirements على كل بحث عشان تتاكد ان البحث ماشي according للجايد لاينز واكوردنج للقانون. اللجنه بتبص على الساينتفك فاليديتي، وهنا الساينتفك فاليديتي المقصود بيها انه يبقى ساوند ريسيرش، وانه يبقى فيه كل المعلومات اللي هي لازم تكون موجوده في اي بروتوكول، ناحيه الانكلوجن والاكسكلوجن كرايتيريا، السامبل سايز اتحسب ازاي. يعني الساينتفك فاليديتي اللي بتبص عليها اللجنه بتبقى ريليتد برضو لمصلحه المشتركين، مش اي يعني ما تقدرش اللجنه تمنع حد انه يعمل بحث لو هو الحاجات اللي موجوده فيه فيها حفاظ على مصلحه المشترك. الموافقه قلنا بتبقى لمده سنه زي ما القانون برضو قال، وان انا المفروض ممكن ادي اللجنه تدي موافقه اقل من سنه لو البحث فيه ريسك عالي شويه علشان تبقى متابعه what's going on. الكونتينيوينج ريفيو بمنتهى البساطه هو ريبورت صغير انا بقدم فيه لما باجي اجدد بقدم فيه انا عملت ايه لحد دلوقتي خلال السنه اللي انا اخذت عليها الموافقه. في الاخر بنقدم الفاينل ريبورت علشان ناخد الرقم اللي احنا هننشر بيه او قبل ما نعمل الدسكشن بتاعه الرساله او قبل ما بنقدم الفاينل ريبورت بتاع البروجكت. اللجان بتتسجل فين في الوقت الحالي؟ في الوقت الحالي قبل ما انشاء المجلس الاعلى بالنسبه للعالم الخارجي او عالميا اللجان بتتسجل في حاجه اسمها الاو اتش ار بي الاوفيس اوف هيومن ريسيرش بروتكشنز، ده موجود في امريكا وده المكان الوحيد عالميا اللي بيسجل اللجان، واللجنه بتاخد فيدرال وايد اشورنس الرقم اللي هي هتقدمه لما يعني تقول ان اللجنه بتاعتها متسجله فيه. عندنا في مصر بنسجل او بنشترك مع الانريك الشبكه المصريه دي اللي شرفت باني شكلتها في 2008 انا وزميلي الفاضل الدكتور هاني سليم اللي حضراتكم سمعتوه من شويه. والحقيقه احنا عملنا الشبكه من 2008 وحاليا احنا معانا 76 لجنه موجودين على مستوى مصر متسجلين في هذه الشبكه. كمان لما شرفت باني كنت رئيس الاداره المركزيه للبحوث والتنميه الصحيه احنا عملنا الدليل الارشادي علشان اللجان تتسجل في وزاره الصحه، والكلام ده كان قبل زي ما بقول لحضراتكم قبل القانون ولسه ساري سو لونج ان المجلس الاعلى لم يتم تشكيله بعد. وحاليا عفوا في حوالي 35 لجنه متسجله في هذه الاداره المركزيه للبحوث والتنميه الصحيه اللي تبع وزاره الصحه. لو حد لا قدر الله يعني ما عملش الكلام ده او ما مشيش ورا كل الكلام اللي احنا قلناه هيحصل وعمل فايوليشن، في الحاله دي اللجنه ممكن تبلغ رئيس المؤسسه، ممكن تبلغ السبونسر بتاع الجرانت، وفي بعض الحالات على مستوى العالم حصل انها بلغت الاديتوريال بورد بتاع الجورنال بعد ما تمت الببليكيشن ان البحث ده كان في مشاكل من الناحيه الاخلاقيه وبالتالي ممكن يحصل له ريتراكشن. تيك هوم مسج اللي عايزه اقولها لحضراتكم انه لجنه الاخلاقيات مش هتعطل الابحاث، بالعكس هي بتحسن الابحاث وهي لجنه مهمه وسبورتيف، فانا بعتبرها لجنه فعلا صديقه لاي حد من الباحثين لان هي بتحاول تحسن البحث من خلال ان كل النقاط تبقى موجوده وان الناس تعمل ابحاث لكن ما تاذيش البارتيسبنت اللي بيدخلوا معاهم. والحل بتاع البازل هي اخر كلمه هقولها انه الصح صح حتى لو ما حدش بيعمله والغلط غلط حتى لو كل الناس بتعمله، فبليز تراي ان حضراتكم تستيك للي موجود في القانون حاليا علشان بكرر ما يبقاش فيه اي مشاكل لحضراتكم. ومتشكره لحسن الاستماع وبشكر تاني الدكتوره سونيا على دعوتي للمشاركه مع حضراتكم.
شكرا جزيلا يا فندم. دلوقتي هنبدأ الدسكشن. كان في سؤال مطروح من بروفيسور مها. بروفيسور مها حضرتك معانا؟ كان what is needed for registration of ال IRB في Supreme Council? Do we need to register a clinical trial in a clinical trial council too? دكتور مها.
السؤال موجه لمين يا فندم؟
موجه لحضرتك يا فندم.
موجه لي. المفروض ان اللجان بتتسجل زي ما قلت حضرتك في المجلس الاعلى. دي لازم تتسجل لما المجلس الاعلى يتكون حسب القانون انها تتسجل خلال شهر، يعني بعد ما اللجنه تتكون المفروض خلال شهر ده حسب القانون واللائحه انها تتسجل في المجلس الاعلى. لكن في الوقت الحالي التسجيل بيتم في زي ما قلت حضراتكم في وزاره الصحه لحد ما المجلس يتشكل.
تمام يا فندم، شكرا جزيلا.
لا. سؤال مكتوب في الشات.
في سؤال مكتوب في الشات، حاضر.
لا هو موجه لي a question to Dr. عزة. What is the stand of REC from working with scientists abroad? I once had this problem that is not approved by REC because of security reasons. هو عموما التعامل مع الجهات العالمية، هو أي بحث لازم ياخد موافقة لجنة الأخلاقيات. التعاون مع الجهات العالمية ده بيحتاج موافقة أمنية، ملوش علاقة بلجنة الأخلاقيات. زي ما حضرتك يعني حضرتك كانت المشكلة إنك ما خدتيش الأبروفل من السكيورتي الجهات الأمنية، لكن لجنة الأخلاقيات بتوافق. الحقيقة كانت اللجنة في الوزارة لما كنت بشرف باني المقرر بتاعها، كانت لجنه الوزاره هي المسؤوله انها تبعت للجهات الامنيه، وكانت بتتلقى الرد وكنا بنبلغه للباحثين، لكن ما كانش لينا رول في انه الجهات الامنيه توافق او لا. دي حاجات امنيه مش تبعنا، مش تبع اللجنه. لكن اللجنه اللي بتبعت للجهات الامنيه كانت اللجنه اللي هي اللجنه بتاعت وزاره الصحه. اللجنه المركزيه حاليا لو جالها حاجه انترناشونال هتبعت للجهات المعنيه، الجهات الامنيه، وبعد كده هتبقى مهمه المجلس الاعلى. اللجنه المركزيه اعتقد انه الصبح كان في محاضره قالتها الدكتوره دينا شكري رئيسه اللجنه المركزيه. فاللجنه المركزيه شورتلي كده او سيمبلي لما بيكون في دراسه في المركز القومي وفي تيودور وفي جامعة القاهرة أو جامعة عين شمس، يبقى الجهات دي كلها تبع وزارة التعليم العالي والبحث العلمي. في الحالة دي مش هنروح للجان في تيودور والمركز القومي وجامعة القاهرة أو جامعة عين شمس، هنروح دايركتلي للجنة المركزية، ناخد موافقة اللجنة المركزية بس. أرجو إني أكون رديت على حضرتك يا دكتورة منة الله.
تمام يا فندم. أي أسئلة أخرى؟
تمام كده يا دكتورة حنان. شكرا دكتورة عزة وكل المشاركين، وشكرا لكل الموجودين معانا. يا رب ما نكونش طولنا عليكم.
شكرا يا فندم، شكرا، ربنا يبارك فيك. شكرا لحضرتك.
ألف شكر.
تمام يا دكتورة حنان.
يا فندم.
خلاص نختم اليوم كده، خلاص. شكرا حضرتك، اتفضلي اختمي اليوم كده.
أولا نورتونا وشرفتونا كل يعني العمالقة اللي تكلموا اليوم وأدلوا بدلوهم العلمي، ما شاء الله عليكم يعني. شكرا جزيلا، وإن شاء الله إلى لقاء قادم السنة القادمة بإذن الله. وشرفنا وسعدنا بكل اللي عرفناه النهاردة وتعلمناه من حضراتكم. شكرا جزيلا.